Thursday afternoon, and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero joining you as always. Appreciate you spending some of your afternoon hours with us. We've got a busy show today here for you on the Sports Voice of Kansas. We will react to last night's thrilling, improbable, almost impossible, and certainly unbelievable Liberty Bowl, which ended in the only way that I know how to appreciate a football game, with me being absolutely heartbroken and downtrodden by the end of it. We will get to that coming up here in just a matter of moments to lead things off. Some more bowl talk coming up later. Not been the greatest start to bowl season for the Big 12 Conference, or frankly, even the new members of the Big 12 Conference, unless you are Texas Tech. They put a whomping on Ole Miss last night. So we'll talk all about bowl season, Liberty Bowl, and more coming up in just a little bit. We've got a full guest list for you today, a guest every hour on the show. We've got Rick Peterson stopping by later on this hour for our Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around. We will do our annual year-in review, Pistol posting his top stories from the boys' side of things, the girls' side of things, and his look back on those we lost in the Topeka and local sports world over the course of this year. So we'll talk all about that with the best of the best, Rick Peterson, coming up at the bottom of this hour. Fulton will join us top of next hour. You just heard from him during Mic'd Up today. Well, he'll stop by for a round of crosstalk coming up at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. And bottom of the 5 o'clock hour today, excuse me, we've got our good friend Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, who not only gets to call another rivalry game for the Chiefs coming up this week, a game the Chiefs should win in a blowout, but he also got to call the start of this past weekend's game against the Seahawks while atop the drum deck after banging the drum right before the game. It was awesome. It was so cool. We're going to talk all about it with Mitch coming up in the 5 o'clock hour today. We'll also get to round two, the semifinal round of What Is Wrong With You for our 2022 Tournament of Failed Champions. We've got our picks that we feel like we need to save. We might have some drama. We'll eventually get it down to 3, our final 3 for the year. And then tomorrow we will determine our yearly champion in What Is Wrong With You. That is coming up at 4:20 today. And of course, we will get to our Thursday Night Football preview, some either or, over, under, and so much more on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We'd love for you to be a part of the show as well. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. The number, as always, is 785-272-9429. And the comments section on YouTube is open as well. Our YouTube channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Go search for it. You can go to, just in your URL bar, youtube.com/@Sports on 580. That's the easiest ways that you can find us. You can see the video, and as you got to see yesterday, some impassioned physical reactions to what happened in the first half of the Liberty Bowl.
I don't think it's a coincidence, Brendan, that yesterday was our most viewed stream, I believe.
Yeah.
In the history of 580 Sports Talk on YouTube. I think it was all about the Liberty Bowl reaction cam that we had on you for the first half of that game. I think that got eyeballs, and I think that got clicks. I think that was a big deal. I think clearly the solution for us to take over the internet and then the world is to do more shows during sporting events.
I need to be in agony. Clearly, that's what that showed. I need to be in both physical and mental agony, and the people are going to come out. We have had requests to do the 580 Sports cast of Chiefs games. We might have to for the Raiders game because, God, that's going to be awful. That is going to be truly terrible. But we appreciate all you guys who are watching on the YouTube stream, who have subscribed as well. Subscription numbers continue to go up. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube yet, we would love for you to do so. Again, the channel name, Sports on 580 WIBW. Without further ado, let's get to the Liberty Bowl from last night. I said in, maybe not exactly these words, but by the end of the show yesterday, there were about 5 minutes left in the first half. It looked dire for KU. And I said, hey, look, just play hard, fight to the end, make it look a little bit more competitive. I knew that Leipold's group was obviously going to play a full 60 minutes because that has been the biggest change this year. Even when the games have been bad, and the only one that was truly, truly awful was when KU lost to Texas, although it looked like yesterday's game might be trending that way. They've played a whole 60 minutes. They have not given up which sounds like a low bar, and to be frank, it is. But when you go back and you look at a couple of those Les Miles coach games, pretty much the entire David Beatty era, the entire Charlie Weiss era, that team would get punched in the mouth and would just lie on the mat until the game finally mercifully came to an end. I knew that wasn't going to happen in that game last night, but I never thought that when they were down 25 in the third quarter with just about 24 minutes left in the game, and I leaned to my wife, who I was sitting next to on the couch watching the game, and I said, I just want them to get within like 10 points, 2 scores, like make it look competitive, fight to the end. Let's see a little bit of positivity as we're now 2 months away from the start of spring ball. Let's get a little positive momentum as we wrap up this game. And then Jalon Daniels turned into the greatest quarterback in the history of college football for a half. That was one of the best individual performances. And it's not the only one that stood out, and we'll get to a lot of them. But that is one of the best quarterback games I have ever seen in my entire life. It was, statistically speaking, the best quarterback game in the history of Kansas football, in the history of the Liberty Bowl, which has been around now for 64 editions. That's pretty darn good by Jalon Daniels. Dan, he had 565 all-purpose yards in that game. He had over 500 yards passing, 544 through the air. Both of those are new KU records. He's the first KU quarterback ever to throw for 500 yards in the game. He beat Todd Reesing's record that he set in 2009 in a shootout against Missouri at Arrowhead Stadium. KU comes up short, and we'll get to, in just a moment, the 2-point play at the end of the game, because that's obviously where a lot of the controversy from last night comes from. But that performance by KU to get back in that game to score 25 unanswered, it became 32 unanswered through the first overtime session at one point. 32 unanswered points. They tie it with a 25-point comeback in the third and fourth quarters. Jalon Daniels sets all those records. That is one of the best performances I've ever seen by far by a KU team, and it just sucks that it had to come in a loss after all that.
The thing that was most impressive about what Jalon Daniels did last night is that he did it while taking an unholy beating.
Yeah.
And running for his life for the better part of the night. The biggest advantage that Arkansas had in the game last night, what enabled them to jump out to the 25-point lead, was in the trenches. They had bigger and faster defensive linemen than KU was able to cope with, and they had bigger and stronger offensive linemen than KU was able to cope with. Their advantage was in the trenches. That's where, I know SEC speed is a running gag and a bit of a meme, but SEC size, SEC strength, like that's really where you see the difference. I think a lot of times when you see non-conference play and you see an SEC team lined up, like a middle-of-the-pack SEC team lined up with a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 or middle-of-the-pack Pac-12 or whoever it might be. That was where Arkansas's big advantage were, and they were giving it to Jalon Daniels. And he came out of the gate, and he looked kind of like he did in that Texas game, frankly, where he looked rusty, and he was not quite on song with his receivers. He threw the early interceptions, and those turnovers just dug KU such a hole that it did. It felt like the game was going to get out of hand and that Arkansas was going to cruise. And then Jalon Daniels just wouldn't let him lose. And it was his ability to make a big throw. He was getting time, and then that time would elapse in a hurry, and the pocket would break down, and he was having to elude the rush, and he was having to scramble out, and he was throwing while being hit. Even the first touchdown of the game to Topeka's own Kai Thomas, he took a hit, kind of a low hit, as he was getting that ball away. But the resilience of Jalon Daniels, what was the most impressive to me. Not just the 500 plus yards, not just the touchdowns, not just the comeback and the going to 3 overtimes. The fact that he had to pick himself up off the ground just about every single time and get up and do it again. Get up and face that pass rush and do it again. Take a sack, get up. I'm going to convert 2nd and 29. I don't give a damn. I got this. I'm going to throw a seed over the middle to some guys that, frankly, were not like when there's 525 yards, there's a lot of yards to go around, right? So like Luke Grimm got his and the tight ends did their thing, but it was some other guys, Emilian and Terry, that you saw emerge and have some big catches there in that fourth quarter in the course of the rally late in regulation. Trust in the wide receivers, trust in the arm, and the ability to just keep getting up. Like Jalon Daniels shows you everything. That was a dude that went out on his shield, and I will remember that performance for a very long time. That will be, I think, the defining Jalon Daniels performance, even in defeat. And I don't want to shortchange what he's capable of next year under center for the Jayhawks, but when I think about Jalon Daniels, I'm going to think about how that kid took a beating and kept on getting up and just wouldn't let his team die down 25 in a bowl game.
There were folks yesterday, and I know that when you watch a game live and you have something like social media that allows you to react in an instant, sometimes you have reactionary opinions on things. It was not just this game. I saw it certainly during the Texas game. I saw it during the K-State game. People clamoring, put Bean in. Like, Daniels doesn't have it. We should have been riding with Bean the entire time. Jason Bean ain't doing that, man. Like, that dude, number 6 in blue, is different, and he is special. And we were on that from the very start this year. Even when there was, oh my God, is he going to be a Heisman candidate this year? When there was that kind of national, wow, this is like a unique thing. We were both saying, no, this is the real thing. This guy is the real deal. And last night was an example of that. People I know who are KU fans or otherwise, people I respect who are KU fans or otherwise, like that, this ain't happening. We're going to have a real issue if it's true that Bean wants to step away from football, because what are we going to do at quarterback? No. Jalon Daniels, number 6 for KU, is a special, special player. And you don't get guys like that. I don't want to compare him necessarily to Reesing specifically, but there are certain guys who just have it. They're just different on the field. And I don't know if he's necessarily, Jalon I'm speaking of, as talented just naturally as like, a Bryce Young, for example, or someone like that. But some guys just have a next level that not everybody can get to, even extremely talented players. That is what we saw from Jalon Daniels yesterday. He is special. He is the guy, and he can carry this program into the future just like he did. Maybe not to the same statistical numbers, but he can do that kind of thing for this program. In a game that I do not think was coached especially well to a degree by KU, I thought Leipold got very, not strangely conservative, because that's often how he coaches, but like, it's 4th and 4. You're in plus territory. You're down 18 in a bowl game, and you're going to punt with your quarterback?
Yeah, that was...
What? That doesn't make any sense.
That was the point where I kind of tuned out. Like, okay, yeah, they've waved the white flag a little bit. If they're not going to go for it there, then they're worried about saving face more so than they are staying in the game. And that was my cue to kind of tune it out a little bit. And I did so until they got it within 2 touchdowns. I got the ball back with about 3 minutes left.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think Andy Kotelnicki called that great of a game either. I mean, it was fine. I think Andy Kotelnicki is a great offensive coordinator, but I don't think that was his best game by any means as a play caller. And yet Daniels was still able to do that. I wanted to start with the stuff that's all good before we get to the stuff that's going to be dramatic, because there were a lot of great individual performances, especially on the offensive side. I do want to give the defense credit too, by the way. They needed to make 3 straight stops in the 4th quarter. They forced a punt. They forced a admittedly controversial fumble, and then they were able to make 1 tackle on Arkansas on a run play, and that sent the game to overtime. So I do want to give Borland's defense credit, because they sucked for most of the game, but they came up big late. And offensively, you had Jalon, who was obviously great. Kai Thomas, seeing him have 2 touchdowns in the game, that was awesome. Best game of the year, save for the bowl game. That is so good to see, and hopefully that is a great jumping off point for him going into next year, and we can see that 1-2 punch with him and Neal.
Because, he dealt with the injuries early on, Thomas, and I really thought there would be a bigger role in the offense for him, but the injuries sort of kept that from happening. I think the bowl game was a lot more of what KU, I think, can expect from Kai Thomas moving into next year. That ability out of the backfield and the ability to be a goal line threat for them. They really want to use him down there around the goal line. Not that Devin Neal's not a pretty tough runner down near the paint himself, but I think that was a jumping off point, and I certainly hope it is for the former Topeka High Trojan. You had a couple good receiving performance. Jared Casey is such a good football player. Like, he's not all that big. He's not very fast, but he's got incredible hands, and he is always in the right spot. And he is such an incredibly good football player. Lawrence Arnold had over 100 yards. Mason Fairchild, the Andale product, he had another big night. You and I, more than anyone else who covers this team, were right about Luke Grimm. He is a superstar. He is so freaking good. His hands are great. He's a great route runner. He's always open. He's tough.
He's tough as hell, man. He takes so many shots because he's so small. He's an unbelievable player. He was great last night. 10 for 167 and the late touchdown. Awesome. And that brings us to it will always be the most second-guessed part of the game. Always. Taking the ball out of Jalon Daniels' hand on the 2-point play. It is stupid that we got to a point or overtime when you get that far in is a 2-point shootout. That's nonsense, but it is what it is. And I understand arguments that have been made by Jesse Newell, who I have immense respect for, who now covers the Chiefs, obviously, but covered KU and talked to us about them for so many years, said, look, you've only got a certain number of 2-point plays, goal line plays, whatever. If you've gone through the list and you have executed that play well in the past, you're willing to run it in that situation. I understand that. I understand, hey, that's a tough decision for Bean to make. Split second. Maybe he thought he couldn't get there. He's fast, but maybe not the most physical runner. Thought he could make the throw. Bad decision, but I get it. You can make all those arguments, and that's fine. But this is where I think you run into the battle of process versus feel of the game. 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you it's about process. It is get the process right. And I understand this play has worked before. The defense for Arkansas showed multiple times that they were willing to follow Bean all across the field and leave other guys open. And there was an open guy on that play. It was Mason Fairchild. Jalon Daniels had thrown for 544 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had run for a touchdown in the game and was in the midst of the best offensive performance in Kansas football history. How do you take the ball out of his hands? If you're going to lose, let him be the one who makes the final play one way or the other. That was the biggest one of the biggest plays in the modern history of the program. He was having the best day in the history of the program. How do you not let him be the one who decides your fate? I can't. Run a play you ran earlier in the game if you have to. Fine, whatever. Who cares? Let Daniels make it happen because that's what he had been doing the entire half and overtime.
Now, I'm sympathetic to that argument that you want to dance with the one that brung you, so to speak. And Daniels had brought them all the way back from 15 down in a short amount of time and had them in the third overtime. He was the reason they were there, and he deserved to be the reason that the game continued or didn't continue. At the same time, it's not like they ran Philly special and had Jared Casey try to throw the ball, right?
That's true.
It's not like they ran, a double reverse, pitchy woo-woo and got way too cute and tried to have Devin Neal throw a jump pass or something along those lines. Jason Bean's a quarterback.
True.
Jason Bean's a veteran. He's played a lot of football. He's made a lot of throws. KU's run a lot of that stuff. Not just down near the goal line, but they'll run that in any part of the field, the stuff with Bean as an extra guy. In fact, they used him as a decoy on the first touchdown of the game.
And it worked.
Yeah, it worked brilliantly because they got Kai Thomas wide open on that one side of the field. I even knew watching the game, like I had the thought in my head and did not express it because my wife was watching Emily in Paris on the other television. But I had the thought in my head in the overtime. I said, I bet at some point if they get to 2-pointers, they're gonna run a play where Bean throws it. Like it just felt like, yeah, this is going to be one of their 2-point plays. So every team has but so many, and I knew at some point they were probably going to call on a Jason Bean play, whether that was him throwing, whether that was him running, or whether that was him being used as a decoy. They had that play in the playbook. They schemed it up. It was there. And I think Jason Bean just made the wrong decision. The ball rode on him a little bit when he let it go. I feel terrible for Jason Bean.
Yeah, I do too.
Not the way he wanted to have it end, and certainly because he's the guy, right? Like, look, I've seen the more snarky-minded K-State fans on Twitter last night talking about how Jason Bean's their favorite Jayhawk player now because he's the reason that KU ended up with a losing season or whatever it is. Like, Jason Bean's got to wear that, and that sucks. And I hate that for him. And that's a bad spot to put your backup quarterback in because he becomes the scapegoat rather than if Jalon Daniels misses that throw, then what are you going to say? Oh, man, he just didn't make that one play, but he made all these other plays and is the reason you're here.
And I think that's the big thing, because I agree. I feel awful for Jason Bean because I'm sure there are some lunatics who are, calling him an idiot or, you suck, you ruined this, whatever it might be. Back off, because he did so much for this team all year. We all remember the video from when they beat Oklahoma State. He's crying on the side. This dude played his ass off all year for the team. Yeah, there weren't a lot of wins. No, he's not as good of a quarterback as Jalon Daniels is, but it mattered to him. And this was, in all likelihood, the final game he is going to play in his football career. And to have it end like that, it's going to eat at him for a long time. And I really do feel for him. And, as a fan, I don't hold any ill will toward a player for that. Certainly not. But to me, it comes down to, why are you putting him in that situation? I feel like it is a much easier thing to rationalize and explain away logically to say, we decided to ride with the guy who did everything to get us to this point, who, as you phrased it, just would not let us lose. And you're right. If you missed that play, look, Daniels did so much. You washed away and say, hey, sometimes that's just the breaks when you play a competitive, emotional, tiring football game. Sometimes you miss a play. Instead, you are giving the public, us, the opportunity to criticize the play and say, hey, why him? Like, he only had thrown one other pass in the game that was also on a trick play. Yeah, he'd been out there, but, why? And the excuse that I saw a lot, which I think is kind of a mutated form of this argument, is, well, if the play had worked, Andy Kotelnicki would be a genius. Lance Leipold would be a genius. Okay, but you know what else might have been genius? Just running a normal play that worked. Like,
right.
I don't think you have to be like, well, it could be one or the other. Well, there are literally infinite options in the middle of those two things.
Well, the other part of it was they weren't going to win playing power football down there, right?
No.
They needed to stretch the field. They needed to use their speed. They needed to get somebody, whoever it was, out on the perimeter. That's what you saw on the 2-point conversion in the second overtime. They got Jalon Daniels out on the perimeter. Jared Casey ran a nice little flat route, got the step he needed, made the catch, got the ball over the line for the 2-pointer. So it was never going to be, let's just lower our head and give the ball to Devin Neal or give the ball to Kai Thomas or just run it into the line. It was always going to be a play like that at some point. There are a lot of moving parts on those plays, but at the end of the day, the people that matter most are the guys in the locker room, the guys in the huddle. And I firmly believe that they broke that huddle with full conviction and full belief that that play was going to work and they were going to go to a fourth overtime. And at the end of the day, if that's the play you call, then it is the right process. If you've got full buy-in from all 11 guys in that huddle, and I believe that they did, then that's the process that's right. And you can ignore what they're telling you on Twitter, and you can ignore what they're telling you on, the Big O Tires text line. You can ignore those things. You don't have to listen to that noise. You ran the play you believed in. It didn't work, but you ran the play you believed would. And as long as that's something you can look your teammate in the eye and your coach in the eye and believe at the end of the night, and that's all that really matters.
If you had told me when the game was a 25-point deficit, or hell, even right before the half when the show ended yesterday and said, hey, KU's only going to lose by one score, I'd say, man, that is a great performance. That's a great comeback. That's a great effort. I know it's easy after the way it ended to just be crushed by it, but man, KU played so well. They did so much, and Jalon Daniels is the dude, man.
Perfectly executed onside kick. Holy cow.
Also, in total fairness, and I know Arkansas fans are mad about the officiating. The fumble that Kobe Bryant recovered, I can't believe they let that stand. Like, I thought he was clearly down. The targeting flag at the end, that was absolutely targeting. Like, I thought clearly, but it's just crazy to see that flag thrown in that moment.
It is, but yeah, like watching the replay, he launches with the crown, leading with the crown of his helmet. And that is by the book a targeting foul. Like, there's no real doubt about what that play is.
But they also, if you're an Arkansas fan, you're mad about that. Y'all should look yourself in the mirror. Like, what is Matt Landers doing on that onside kick? He's waiting 15 yards back and he just stands there.
Yeah.
Like, what do you, their coaching was bizarre, to say the least, in that game. That's an all-time game. Highest scoring Liberty Bowl ever. Second most total yardage combined in any bowl game ever.
It was everything you love about college football.
Agreed.
It was everything you absolutely love about a college football game. And it's unfortunate that either team has to lose. It's unfortunate that Kansas came out on the wrong side of it. But as a texter on the 785 puts it on our Big O Tires text line, this can be a springboard for what I hope is a string of successful seasons. It does. It doesn't feel demoralizing as 38-13 or 38-20 would have been. Instead, it feels like we left it all out there. We showed what we were all about. And now the next step is the next step.
We've got to take a quick break. We've got more college football talk coming up at 4:30, but right now we will come back from the commercial, play either or over under here on 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan on this Thursday, December 29th. Comment section is open on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. Also, if you're watching on the YouTube stream right now, Dan and I are backwards from our normal alignment.
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Yeah, so
I'm really confused.
So the way, little inside baseball here, we had a different login technological setup today, so now we can actually flip the side of who's who.
R.I.P. to the Dan graphics is what that means, by the way. So
yeah, I know that's a big hit with the crowd.
Huge apologies in particular to our guy Vance, who really loves when I pull out the Dan graphics, but we are retiring the Dan graphics today.
So here's the thing here. If you're watching on the YouTube, if you're listening on the Sports Voice of Kansas 580 WIBW, this does not affect you. But if you are watching the video stream, the way we normally are, when I'm on the left side of the screen, Dan is on the right. But now we flipped sides, which is weird because I'm not used to it because we've done it 2 months the other way.
Right.
But now the way it's set up, it looks like we're looking at each other in the screen.
Which, in fact, we are in real time. But now the way that our cameras are aligned, the way that our microphones are aligned, it's actually going to look like we are having a conversation and not talking. He is not talking to somebody off screen, and I am not talking to somebody off screen.
Talking in two separate phone booths.
Yes.
All right, let's get to some either-or over-under for today. My either-or over-under will take us to the Kansas City Chiefs, into their all-world quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. Do you know how many times in Patrick Mahomes' career, by the way, he's thrown over 40 touchdown passes?
4 times. This is his 5th year. 3 times in 4 years.
He has done it once.
Really? The first year, the 50 touchdowns?
2018, he threw for 50. That was an NFL high that year. 2019, he only threw 26. He missed a couple games.
Injury, yeah.
But only had 26. The last 2 seasons, he's had 38 and 37. This year, he's at 37 with 2 games to go. So I will say over under, I'm trying to think of a reasonable number here. Over under 43 and a half touchdowns the rest of the season.
He's at 37?
He's at 37. So that'd be
7
6
touchdowns.
and a half or more.
7 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. I'm going to go under because I think that there will be a lot of running the ball down near the goal line in these final 2 games. They're going to try and see if they're going to be able to do that successfully. It's kind of like what we saw in the Rams game, right? Where they really focused on the run and tried to run the ball down near the goal line. And because the Rams, at the time Aaron Donald was playing and they have a good run defense and a good red zone defense, they put the kibosh on that. But I think the Chiefs will find some value in trying to run the ball down near the goal line against Broncos teams and Raiders teams that are all but done with this season anyway. So I don't think he'll have too many of the close ones. So I think he probably has 5 or 6 last 2 weeks. He'll get over 40, but I think he'll come in under 43 and a half.
Part of me wonder, because I think the smart bet is to go with the under. I mean, 43, that's still 3 more touchdown passes per game. But part of me wonders if Andy Reid's going to try to pad it to get his guy an MVP.
Interesting thought.
We know he is willing to put up numbers and do funky stuff against the Broncos and the Raiders in particular.
Right.
My heart is telling me to go with the over because I think there might be some MVP stat padding in these last 2 games.
I just think these next 2 feel like the Rams game where they're going to be able to name their score and win. And I think when they get down in the red zone, they're going to try and see if they can't bully teams. I really do. I think the game plans in the red zone are going to look a lot like the game plan against the Rams.
That's fair.
So, and I won't be surprised if they throttle back and have more of what is for the rest of the league, a normal looking run pass split, not for Andy Reid. Andy Reid's normal run pass split is, huge in favor of the pass. It might be a little more toward a normal 60-40 pass run in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's fair.
I could see that being the case, but I also could see Mahomes being given free license to destroy 2 divisional opponents and decimate them and stomp on the ashes of their seasons a little bit.
That is also certainly possible. Do you have one for this week?
Yes, I do. So the Kansas Jayhawks were in a bowl game yesterday, and they did not win it. They also did not win in basketball, the Battle for Atlantis. So I want to ask you as a fan and try and divorce context here of the general success of KU basketball and KU football. But what's more satisfying as a fan, to win a bowl game that is not a New Year's Six or a college football playoff? So a bowl game or a multi-team college basketball event?
Man, I think that's difficult to do when you take the all right. So in general, I would say a bowl game because it's, it's one thing. You earned it. You worked all season to get to that point. I would assume that would be the case. But I think with the context of it, it is so different school to school. Like, I think if you're talking about a program that's not truly great, and like if you're Bowling Green or something, you're probably feeling pretty good either way, but I'd probably lean a bowl game is bigger because it's a culminating event. But like if you're Alabama, like you don't give a rat's ass about the Citrus Bowl. You're like, no, this sucks. I hate this. Why even bother? This is beneath us. But you win, the Maui Invitational or something, you think, oh, damn, we're really good. That's a great sign for us. So
sure.
I think it's kind of hard to divorce the context from it, but I think in general, most fans would lean with a bowl game. I would too, by the way, for what it's worth.
I think it probably depends on the bowl. It is hard to take the context out of it here, but yeah, like there's a difference between like winning the Liberty Bowl is cool because the Liberty Bowl's been around forever. Winning the Holiday Bowl or the Alamo Bowl or I guess it's not is it still the Gator Bowl?
No, it's the ReliaQuest Bowl.
No.
Oh,
it's the Outback Bowl that changed.
Maybe the Gator Bowl is still around.
I think the Gator Bowl's still around. The of the non-New Year's Six.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
The Tax Slayer Gator Bowl.
Of course. They're all named after tax stuff.
Which is weird.
There are some bowls that mean a little more than others. Like if you win the Fight Hunger Bowl, who cares? Like, neat. Fight Hunger Bowl champions. Yeah, hang the banner. But and I guess there are probably some MTEs, like if you win Maui or if you win the Battle of Atlantis or if you win the preseason NIT, there's a little bit more in that than if you win in Fort Myers.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends. Yeah, team to team. But like I'm sure K-State fans, like, again, they're in a New Year's Six Bowl. They're not in this conversation really this year. But did they enjoy a Cayman Islands Classic victory? I think they did. I think that was a thing to celebrate for their first-year head coach and their brand-new team in a way that maybe if K-State had gone like 7-5 and they won the Armed Forces Bowl, you get a little less psyched about that one.
We've got to take a quick time out. When we come back on the other side of this break, we'll talk to Rick Peterson of TopSports.news here on 580 Sports Talk.
They were tough.
And that makes Rick a citizen of the world.
It is time for the final in Vista Credit Union High School Whip Around for the 2022 calendar year. And as always, we welcome in our good friend, the best of the best, Rick Peterson from TopSports.news. You can find all of Pistol's work at TopSports.news, and you can find him on Twitter as well at Peterson_Rick. Pistol, how was your Christmas holiday this past weekend?
It was good. It was very good. You worried me a little bit when you said final. I had to wait what was coming next.
We can't quit you, Pistol. Don't worry.
Okay. All
Pistol,
right.
you
Well,
bring the
I
ratings.
appreciate that.
People aren't tuning in on Thursdays for Dan and I. They're tuning in for you.
Well, I appreciate that. But no, everything's going great. Already got a game tonight with Washburn women, so we're back at it.
Love to hear that. And let's start with the Washburn women. We'll get to our Prep Sports year in review coming up here in just a moment. But let's start with the Washburn women, who have been off to a bit of a rocky start. I think that's fair to say, to open up this season. But they've got an opportunity to go into 2023 with some positive momentum against Bethany. What are you expecting to see out of Laura Westling's group coming up tonight?
Well, I think they'll play well tonight. I think this is a game they expect to win. I think they'll try to be the aggressor. You know, the thing about Laura's team is they've played great defense. They play very good defense, but they've had a little trouble on offense. But then, you know, I give them a little bit of a break because they've yet to have their full team. And, you know, when you don't have your full team and you're not, you know, super, super deep to begin with, I think that can be a concern.
Coming up tonight, Dan will be on the call of that one, so make sure you keep him in line when he gets to Lee Arena, okay?
I will. I'll look forward to it.
All right, well, let's get to our year in review from the high school side of things. And I don't mean to start on a down note, but you did put together a very lovely piece. I know you do it every year over at TopSports.news, Pistol, looking back on the area greats in the world of sports who passed away in the past year. And man, looking at the list for 2022, and I know, unfortunately, there was a late addition to the list as well with Hal Taliaferro. But, man, there were some real giants of their respective businesses, respective sports that passed away over the course of the past year here in Northeast Kansas.
Well, and, you know, over that last couple of weeks of December, you know, you lost Billie Jean Moore and then Hal. And, you know, others, you know, sometimes I keep it just to like Shawnee County people, but who in Shawnee County doesn't know John Hadel and Lynn Dawson?
Yep.
And you know, they were just legends in this area. But it always seems like it you know, it's always a time to remember what they brought to the table as far as sports in this area. But it's also a little sad. And then, you know, go outside the area. I mean, just here in the last few weeks, you know, Franco Harris and some of those that I grew up with. You know, I grew up watching those guys.
We're talking to Rick Peterson from TopSports.news. He joins us every Thursday for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Around here on 580 Sports Talk. You can go find all of Pistol's great work, including the look back on the legends of Shawnee County and area sports that passed away this year. You can find that and so much more over at TopSports.news. You can also follow Rick on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. All right, Pistol, let's get to the active athletes in the city. Our look back on the year that was in prep sports. I know over the last couple of days, you've been putting up your stories of the biggest stories from the boys and girls sides of prep sports here in the Shawnee County area over the course of 2022. Let's start on the girls' side first. What was your biggest story for any team, any athlete over the course of the past year?
You know, the girls was particularly hard. I sincerely believe that I could have gone like 6 different stories and be legitimate. I mean, you know, I went with Topeka High girls softball because they won 2 in a row. And, you know, and overcame some adversity to win the second one after going undefeated in the first one. But, you know, Washburn Rural volleyball, what a great year. Washburn Rural basketball with the same coach and a lot of the same players. What a great year. You know, just a lot of different stories that I didn't expect everybody to agree with me. And there were times when I was putting it together that I didn't agree with myself. You know, I changed it several times, but it just shows you what a great year it was in girls sports in this county.
And I was going to follow up with that, Pistol. I mean, you go down this list. I mean, we are more than halfway through the list, toward the bottom of the list. We're still talking about team championships. We're talking about individual championships. I mean, it is kind of incredible how so many different schools, so many different programs, and in so many different sports came away with a championship pedigree this past season. And you obviously have a better historical perspective on this than I do, but this feels like, at least in recent memory, this was one of the most successful years for area teams that I can remember.
Yeah, and I think I put that in my league that, there might have been a better year, but I don't know when it would be. Cadence Jeffrey goes through her whole high school swimming career without never losing an individual race at state. She lost the 1 year to COVID, but 6 for 6 in individual titles. You don't see that. I mean, usually you kind of have to wait your turn to get titles, and she started right off as a freshman and never looked back.
That is truly incredible. We got to talk to Cadence this year for one of our Athlete of the Week interviews. An absolutely tremendous swimmer, going Division I for a reason. And that was story number 3. I mean, that just tells you how much depth there was on the girls' side of things this year. As we're talking to Rick Peterson from TopSports.news for our Vista Credit Union High School whip around. Over on the boys' side, Pistol, and again, looking at some of the stories here and looking back on this year, repeat champions and first-time champions, so many different stories to choose from. I think probably because of my closeness to it, I would have leaned with the Seaman boys winning their first state championship in basketball, but hard to go against Washburn Rural's boys winning a championship as well on the wrestling mat.
Well, Washburn Rural actually won their second straight,
yes,
which is why they got the deal there. And then, also with 2 different head coaches, and that wasn't easy for Josh Hogan to step into that spot when Damon Parker stayed with the girls but gave up the boys. And that wasn't easy for Josh, and Josh got it done. I gave them a really, sometimes I go with co and ties, and that's one time I could have, but I hate to do that. And, hey, I think you could make a case for, I usually lean team over individual, but you can't overlook what Tanner Newkirk did as a senior last year.
And again, talking about tremendous individual performances on the boys' side. I mean, that's 2. I'm trying to remember exactly. I know you'll have the specifics here, Pistol, but Tanner obviously had a great year last year as well on the cross-country side of things. But to come back and do it again this year as he heads into KU next year as he starts his college career, the fact that so many of these athletes and teams are able to repeat performances, I think, is what really stands out on the boys' side.
Well, the thing about Tanner is he lost a year to COVID, and then he lost his junior year. He wasn't able to compete at state because of an injury. So he comes back as a senior for the first time he had been there since his freshman year, and sweeps the distance triple with 2 4A records and breaks 9 minutes in the 3,200, number 5 all time. So that's what he did.
Obviously, Pistol, you were at so many of these events and remember all these stories from over the course of the past year. And again, if you want to see Pistol's full list, top 10 for both boys and girls prep sports, best moments of the year, go head over to TopSports.news. They're up there right now. They just came out over the last couple of days. Are there any stories, whether they're at the top of the list or maybe a little bit further down for either boys or girls, that really stand out to you for one reason in particular, something, some sort of emotional attachment to it or a specific memory? Are there any others that really jump off the page to you that are going to stand out to you for a while?
Yeah, I tell you one, and I split them up because there's so many great stories. I split them up, so I do boys and girls. Seaman sweeping both titles in bowling. Now that doesn't happen a lot. And they swept both 5A, 1A titles in bowling the same day, back to back at North Rock Lanes in Wichita, and that was something. Hayden girls tennis. I mean, they were on the list, but to sweep singles titles, doubles titles, team title, and have all members of your team earn state medals, that doesn't happen. So those the top of my head, and you're right, Brendan. There's many, and it's always I love doing that, but I hate doing that because you're always scared you're going to slight somebody or leave somebody out.
All right, Pistol, just a couple more questions for you, and we'll get you out of here so you can go enjoy your New Year's Day weekend. Number 1, as we look back on the year that was, give us one big, bold prediction for 2023 in prep sports. Can be any sports, any athlete, any sort of topic, even if it's off the field intrigue as well. What's your one big headline prediction for the prep sports year to come in 2023?
I won't say, oh, heck, I'll go ahead and say. Right now, as I sit here, I think the team that I think has the best shot to win a state title in this current season, the winter season? Highland Park boys basketball. I've been very, very impressed with them. And we all know their tradition under Ken Darting and going back farther under Randy Springs. But I think they got it set up to make a real good run at a state title. And then obviously, then you got others that I think are just as good. But they're the ones, when I saw them a couple weeks ago, I walked out of that gym thinking, who's going to beat these guys?
I think there are a lot of people around this area who have a very similar prediction for you. I love that one. All right, last one for you, Pistol. Are you going to stay up till midnight on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, I will. It might be 12:10, but yeah, I will. I'll watch the ball drop. I'm not saying – see, Brendan, here's what I do. 68 going on 69. I'll take a couple of naps, and then I'll stay up and watch the ball drop.
Hey, as long as you are awake when it happens, that counts. Doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you do, that counts. Rick Peterson is the best of the best. He covers prep sports and Washburn sports around Topeka and Shawnee County for TopSports.news. Head to the website for all the best coverage of our local teams. You can also find Pistol on social media. Follow him on Twitter at Peterson_Rick. Pistol, as always, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Enjoy New Year's, and we will talk to you coming up next Thursday as we get ready for the resumption of the high school basketball season. Appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you.
That is Rick Peterson from TopSports.news, the absolute best of the best. You can nap all day if you want. As long as you are up at midnight when the clock turns us over to 2023, I'm going to count it. So respect the Pistol. Are you going to stay up till midnight?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I do most nights anyway.
Well, I was going to say, I am. We've got to take a break here at the top of the hour for our national and local news. Fulton will join us for Crosstalk to lead off next hour. Plus, we've got the semis of What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. I'm Brendan Dworzynski. He is Dan Lucero. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us today on this penultimate show for 580 Sports Talk in calendar year 2022. Want to give a shout out to Rick Peterson, Pistol, joining us last hour for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. If you missed our conversation with Pistol, or if you missed any of the first hour of the show, head to our website. That's 580wibw.com. Hover over the podcasts tab or right in the middle of the page. A menu will pop up. From there, click on 580 Sports Talk, and that's where you'll find the hour-by-hour podcast breakdown of the program from today and from every day. Coming up later on this hour, we've got some bowl talk to get to. Texas Tech, the only Big 12 team with a win in bowl action so far, but we've got two more teams tonight, or today, in fact. Oklahoma's about to kick off with Florida State here in just a matter of moments. And Texas is going to play Washington tonight. Washington, for some reason, is an underdog. That feels like one of those things that Vegas knows something that we don't know. So we'll talk about those matchups. And we have the semifinal round for What Is Wrong With You, the sinful, stupid, salacious six coming up today. Dan and I will make our picks for who has to stay. And if, there's any drama, we will duke it out and see which three stories will advance onto the championship round, or rounds, coming up tomorrow. Of course, the Big O Tires text line is open. 785-272-9429 is the text line number, as is the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. Let us know whatever you are thinking about what you're hearing or seeing on the show today. But right now, before we get to anything else in this busy 4 o'clock hour, we welcome in Fulton Caster, the host of Mic'd Up, one of the hosts of Mic'd Up from noon until 3 every day here on the Sports Voice of Kansas. Joining us now for a little crosstalk. Fulton, first question. One, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing well. Not to speak for Dan, I'm doing well anyway.
I'm good, man.
Oh, good to hear.
Have you recovered from last night yet?
My heart palpitations are under control. I've
Good.
lost some years off of my life, but I have recovered.
If you want to see what our initial, or hear what our initial reaction was right after the final play was a failure for KU last night, you can head on over to our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. The live stream instant reaction show Fulton and I did is up right now. Has your opinion changed at all on the final call of the game, the Bean play?
No, and it's more just the fact of I've now read, I read, not here, because I just read the quotes from Lance Leipold and company about why they went to the play they made. I've seen other people's thoughts on it, and the fact that you're kind of getting to the end of your plays. You just got to try something you want to try. I am still of the belief, I get it's not as simple as this, but with the heater that Jalon Daniels was on, you just spread it out and say, Jalon, go make a play. To me, that is what you do if you've burned through what you would call your best 2-point plays that don't involve taking the ball out of Jalon Daniels' hand. That's just where I fall on it. I still don't like the decision. I don't like putting Jason Bean in that position, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and again, that more than anything else, that's just the place I am. That Bean should not have been in the position where he had to make that split-second choice.
No, I'm not upset at him. He's a guy who's coming in cold, had done a couple of plays on the night, but not much. And the other part that comes to me is just when Jason Bean's on the field, you have a feeling something tricky is coming because they're running a 2-quarterback set, because they have not done much with Jason Bean in a situation where it's just he's running traditional routes or doing traditional things. So that also, to me, really takes away some of the surprise of it as well, is that if I'm Arkansas, I see Bean on the field with Daniels, I'm like, there's probably something tricky about to happen.
By the way, I know we've talked about it a bit. We talked about it going into the game yesterday, that it's been reported pretty openly. And I mean, hell, Lance Leipold even said that it's trending as though Bean is going to step away from the game after this season. He even put on his own Instagram story yesterday, tune in for my last game, but then in the corner of the post, put maybe with the eyes emoji. So maybe he's not done. I don't know how cryptically Jason Bean likes to use the social media. What's the best college quarterbacking performance you've ever seen?
Daniels is up there.
He's
prisoner
up there,
of the moment take. I'm not going to put him number one or anything, but what was so remarkable about it, again, was just the physical pounding he took in the process of it. That's what elevates it in my eyes. It's one thing to throw for 500, which is preposterous. It's another to do it while you are taking big shots. He took one in the fourth quarter that I couldn't believe he got up from.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets hit in the head on the play that ended up being targeting in the second overtime. Just unreal stuff from Jalon Daniels to take that licking and keep on ticking, so to speak. So that's pretty high up there for me. Best I've ever seen. I remember when Denard Robinson single-handedly beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That was pretty
That's
great.
up there.
I mean, not numbers wise, but just like he had to do everything, and so he did. Adrian Martinez against Oklahoma this year, pretty high on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mahomes and Mayfield in their shootout.
Best I've ever seen from two players combined. And I know, by the way, we didn't say anything about KJ Jefferson earlier. KJ Jefferson was awesome last night.
He was.
Fantastic.
He was because he on his own, I think it was 417 all-purpose yards. Pretty good.
Really fun player.
Yeah.
Really fun player, KJ
Agreed.
Jefferson.
I think for me, I'm kind of jumping in line here, Fulton, sorry. The one that stands out beyond Mayfield and Mahomes, which is one of the greatest college football games I've ever seen, Joe Burrow had 8 touchdowns in a playoff game against Oklahoma a few years ago.
That was pretty great.
Almost all of it came in the first half. That stands out to me. I actually listened to that one on the radio. I was doing some driving that day, and I didn't get to watch the game, but I listened to it on the radio, and I went back and watched it later. It's like, this is – I don't know if I've ever seen someone who looked as truly unstoppable as he and that offense looked in that game. So at least somewhat recently, I would probably lean with that.
I mean, I throw Joe Burrow's playoff performance up there. I got to watch that entire game, and it was truly amazing. Jalon Daniels, person of the moment, I'm with you. It is up there. I can't really put it one. You'd have to really think about it. Mahomes and Mayfield from that game just always stands out to me, and I don't know if it's just partly because of them combined what they did together, but that was just a game where it truly seemed. Because you mentioned Denard Robinson's game where, for Michigan, where he truly did. He just drugged Michigan to a win against Notre Dame and said, screw it, I'll just be the guy to win the entire football game. It felt like you had two different guys trying to do that with the Mayfield-Mahomes matchup, where each one just desperately was trying to drag the other one to a win. And I think that's why that one just always is really front place of my mind, discussing best quarterback games.
Gosh, there are a lot.
There's been some good ones.
Michael Vick, even in a loss in that Sugar Bowl against Florida State,
Yeah.
was pretty incredible.
You could probably name any one of like 8 Cam Newton performances.
Yeah, I think the LSU game was the one for me.
Yeah.
But that entire year, he just had some great ones.
Manziel against Alabama, the year Johnny Football won the Heisman.
Yeah.
He made those remarkable plays against Alabama.
Vern Lundquist losing his mind. Oh, my gracious.
I miss Vern calling games.
I miss Vern, too.
Man.
Nobody can get away with that. Nobody has the combination of gravitas and big game experience and just old man irascibility to get away with calling a big play and just saying, oh, no!
I think that's my favorite Vern call.
Oh, yeah.
At least from the latter part of his career.
Was that that was Nick Marshall over the top?
Ricardo Lewis.
Yep. Auburn beating Georgia.
Oh, no! That Auburn team is probably the luckiest team in any sport I've ever seen.
Easily.
I know it ran out when they got to the national title game. That Florida State team was a machine. But between the kick six, the Ricardo Lewis play, I mean, every week they had something happen. I miss Vern.
I do too.
Yeah.
He's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah. He's up there.
I think for some reason, a lot more college football play-by-play guys stand out to me. Maybe it's just kind of the nature of college football versus the NFL or other sports. But like Gus, I know he's done numerous sports. Vern Lundquist, I love Brent Musburger, even when he got kind of weird. Well, then again, I think a lot of people would tell you he's always been kind of weird. I don't know. Those just stand out to me as like soundtrack of watching sports more than other guys do. I love Joe Buck, but I don't know if I'd necessarily call him like the soundtrack of the NFL in the same way.
Well, probably 40 years from now, there'll be guys in their 20s and 30s who are like, man, Joe Buck was the voice of my childhood.
Yeah. I mean, I can pretty much say that. He's been the number one guy on a TV broadcast of the NFL for, when did he take over in the main booth? 2001? Or 2002? Trying to remember when Summerall.
Summerall's last game was Super Bowl 36.
That's right.
I think so. It was the Rams Patriots. So that was his last game. So that was the 2001 season. So yeah, 02 was when Joe Buck became Fox's number one guy.
So for 20 years, he is, and I'm 28. He has been the main voice of an NFL weekly broadcast, the big game of the week. And since 96, was it that he started doing the World Series? 95?
90. Well, I think it was 96. Yeah, 96 was the first World Series on Fox. And then 97, they had they finished out the baseball. What do they call it? Baseball Night in America or the Baseball Network.
Yeah.
The Baseball Network contract wrapped up. So that World Series, I think, was on NBC. And then 98 on, it's been on Fox.
Man, that's wild. So, yeah, pretty much it has been Joe Buck. By the way, here's a trivia question for you. Who's older, Joe Buck or Bill Self?
I think Self by a year or two.
I would guess Self.
It is Bill Self. It's actually by several years.
Oh, really?
He's 60. Yeah, I think he just turned 60.
I think Bill is exactly 60.
Because I thought Buck was mid to late 50s.
53.
53.
He's
Okay.
only 53?
See, he's been around for forever. I don't think he looks quite that old.
No, he doesn't.
He can do this for 20, 25 more years if he wants. I mean, what's
really
Al Michaels late 70s right now?
Yeah, I think he's regretting doing it this long.
Al's regretting it tonight. Al Michaels is going to go off the rails tonight. I'm just not caring.
Final Thursday night game of the year. Everything Al has been holding back, which, to be fair, might not be much, is all going to come out tonight.
Amazon just said, Al, just be Al Michaels in the booth. We don't care about anything else. And I was kind of most of this year like, all right, bet.
Here's
going to be me.
Here's my question for Al Michaels, because he is doing a playoff game for NBC, I believe.
I think that's right.
Because I think
that's true.
I believe they're doing two playoff games this year.
That wild card weekend.
Yeah,
probably.
So Tirico's obviously going to get a game. Al Michaels is going to come back and do a game for NBC. Do they let Michaels do the game with Collinsworth? Like, you have to, right?
I think you do.
I want them to.
Right?
You give Tirico Jason Garrett and say, have fun. And you give Al back. You give us the pairing back.
You would
one
think.
Night. You bill it as one night only.
Well,
Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth back in the building.
Tirico has called games with Garrett and with Tony Dungy before.
Yeah. Just have those.
Put Al and Chris back together.
Yeah.
I'm with that.
Bill it old school territory wrestling style. One night only event. Never going to see this again.
Tonight, Al Michaels is going to give America a crash course in live betting. I really feel like every 3 plays, he's going to be like, well, that's what that does to the money line.
To be completely honest with you, I'm a little surprised he hasn't done, like, the Amazon broadcast has an official partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, they put their whole pregame is, hey, by the way, DraftKings. Did you hear about DraftKings?
Richard Sherman's got a big endorsement deal with them.
Yeah. So I'm a little surprised they haven't told Al, like, yeah, go ahead. Like, Al, what's the live line?
Let loose, King.
I have a feeling Herbie would be out of his element.
Oh, definitely.
I can't imagine he's a big gambler.
He's like, yeah,
that's
you're thinking of a different Ohio State quarterback. That's not me.
Have you ever looked at Herbie's stats? Like, do you know him off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. I know it wasn't great. He was no Art Schlichter. I'll tell you that right now.
In his career, Kirk Herbstreit had 5 touchdown passes and 11 interceptions.
That's going to be legit, like, startling to people who, like, again, because I think Herbie's going to do this for a long time, too. I could see Herbie being in the booth, well into his 50s, 60s. And they're going to be, kids not even born yet. They're going to get to their teens and think, man, Kirk Herbstreit, that dude, he's the voice of college football. He must have been some kind of baller at Ohio State. Nah, man.
No. He was a dud.
He was extremely mid.
I read his book this summer. It was a pretty entertaining read. Very plain English. It was a fun read because I didn't know a whole lot about his background. And he talked about how, like, hey, before 5-star recruits were officially a thing, like before 24/7 sports was a thing, I was a 5-star recruit and I nearly transferred like 3 times because he wasn't good. They moved him to safety at one point, but that man just loves Ohio State. Yeah. I think it was his senior year, 93. They had Eddie George and like 3 other NFL running backs in their backfield. Eddie George was a freshman, I think. He barely even played. That's how good that Ohio State team was. I wouldn't pass either, Kirk Herbstreit or otherwise. Coming up tonight, sticking with college football, Oklahoma, a different red powerhouse team, taking on Florida State. Who you got?
This one I really don't have a good feeling on either side about who actually cares to be there and who's going to play a little bit harder.
Here's a question. This is a more fun question to comprehend, rather maybe more so than who's going to win this battle of once great programs. This rematch of the BCS national championship game from 2000. Here's a more fun question to ponder. Which coach would be more pissed off if they get the Cheez-It bucket dumped on them after the game?
I want to say Venables. Venables doesn't strike me as a guy who will cut it loose and have a little bit of fun.
But, I could see him faking excitement and happiness for the sake of...
For me, it's easier to see Mike Norvell just embracing the moment, like living in the moment.
I kind of do. Also, in this game, I think I lean Florida State over Oklahoma. I don't feel great about
Florida
it.
State was playing pretty good football.
That's it. The memories I have, last memories I have against Oklahoma, some not great football. Last few games I watched at Florida State, they at least played hard.
Do you realize they're ranked 13th in the country?
Florida State?
Florida State
Can't be correct.
Yeah. They were pretty good this year.
Why are they playing a 6-6 Oklahoma team in the Cheez-It Bowl?
That is a great question. I could not tell you why.
I'm more baffled at what's happening. No, but give me Florida State. Give me the Seminoles.
Yeah, I think Florida State's just the better team. Yeah, they were 9-3 this year. They won their last 5 games of the season.
They did.
Granted, they were not exactly playing a difficult schedule.
They were playing duds.
Their hardest stretch, they played Wake, North Carolina State, and Clemson all back-to-back. Lost all of them not by much. What is it? A combined 18 points and 3 losses. The end of the year, Georgia Tech, Miami, Syracuse, Louisiana, Florida. They won all 5. Not exactly a murderer's row. OU, as we know, 6-6 on the year. I think I'd take Florida State too. Yeah. Can you, Fulton, give me a good reason why Washington is an underdog to Texas?
I got nothing. I would take the Huskies in this matchup. Nine ways to Sunday.
Computers love Texas.
They do.
The computers, like the formulas, they all love Texas and have loved Texas throughout the year. I don't know if the computers know that Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson aren't playing.
Yeah.
That DeMarvion Overshone isn't playing. That most, if not all, of Washington's key players are playing in this game. I think they're all playing. I think I read somewhere they only had 4 guys hit the portal, and none of them were key contributors.
That's impressive.
All I need to know for this game for me to take Washington is I watched Texas's defense played this year. Mainly, I watched what their secondary at times is average. And then I know Michael Penix is playing for Washington.
So Washington can't stop anybody either, but
that's true.
They have a decent pass rush.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is probably going to be enough to slow Texas down when they get into must-pass situations. Quinn Ewers doesn't much like being pressured.
When Ewers gets pressured, he kind of doesn't play good football.
The money line from our friends at FanDuel for that game was plus 126 for Washington, and I may or may not have made an investment.
Yeah, I can't blame you. I'll be tempted to make some investments in that game.
Same number right now if you pop the FanDuel open.
I might have to. on your
phone.
I can't logically.
Promo code Lucero, everybody.
I can't logically say that Texas would win this game. I just feel like it's Washington.
At some point, I missed that Bijan was opting out, but I'm really not surprised.
I'm not stunned.
I wouldn't play this game either. By the way, speaking of opting out, to flip from college football to the NFL, how surprised were you by the Derek Carr news this week?
I was surprised. I've always been a guy, when his career started, I believed in Derek Carr. And then as it's kind of gone on, I've kind of really, sold the stock off. You spent too much time with Jake, who I think is #1 Derek Carr hater. Honestly, that might be it. But it's a level of just, if anything, he's being scapegoated. Like, that's what's happening. Derek Carr is the only reason this team was relevant last season. They made it to the playoffs last season because Derek Carr, turnovers be damned, played overall very well. This year, is he leading league interceptions? Yes. Is he having as great of a year as last year? No. Did part of the reason they lost to the Steelers was because Derek Carr was handing out interceptions like Oprah? Sure. But also, his defense has been a travesty for 9 years. A train wreck of a defense. Train wreck of a head coaching situation. Josh McDaniels has never had success outside of when Tom Brady's been hanging around him. Without Tom Brady, Josh McDaniels is a failure. Like, that's what he is. And so he's a guy, for all anyone wants to say about him as a football player, he's a guy that I think deserves better than basically being shipped off to somewhere by the Raiders because they can't fire their head coach because Mark Davis is too poor. Because that's what this is. Mark Davis is too poor to fire Josh McDaniels, so he has to get rid of Derek Carr. It is. I didn't think of this originally. I did eventually bring it up on the show yesterday, but there is something that really, really stinks about Jarrett Stidham being the guy here. Like, something smells so specifically McDaniels scented rotten about that guy being the backup who's going to end up playing these 2 games. Was Jarrett Stidham brought into New England when Josh McDaniels got there? Yes. There it is. I think there is a very real chance, not to be super conspiratorial about it,
the Raiders are just going to relive exactly what happened to the Broncos in, what was that, 2009, the Cutler trade?
I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think
Was it
09 is
9?
right. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think. 2009 or 2010. Yeah,
It was one of the two.
because McDaniel's first year as head coach was 09. Yeah, so yeah, it would have been
Jay
09.
Cutler's first season in Chicago was 2009.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he came in and he traded Cutler, and they started Kyle Orton for a year.
Mhm.
2 years, they actually start, and then moved away from him at the final couple of games. It gave Tebow the reins at the end of 2010, but Josh McDaniel wasn't around to see that. He'd already gotten the axe.
They're just going to do exactly what the Broncos did in 2009.
Yep.
They moved on. Derek Carr and Jay Cutler are effectively the same quarterback. They're like
Honestly,
startlingly
yeah.
similar. Can't handle pressure. Not very good in the cold. Big arm. Never really quite put it together. Although I think people like Derek Carr more than they like Jay Cutler.
Yeah, probably.
Replaced with nobody. Kyle Orton probably better than Jarrett Stidham.
But
Definitely better than Jarrett Stidham.
Still nobody's.
And who is coming out in the draft this year but an incredibly hyper-athletic quarterback from the University of Florida who has severe accuracy
And
issues.
where's number 15?
And where's number 15?
Oh,
The Raiders are absolutely drafting Anthony Richardson.
I fully believed before you said this that it was just going to be Will Levis and that would be their quarterback next year. But now that you put this all in front of me, they're 110% taking Anthony Richardson. 100%.
I don't know if either of those dudes are going to be any good in the NFL, but one of them
know.
is going to be a Raider. There's no doubt about it. What's coming up tomorrow on the final mic'd up of 2022?
Yeah, we got the final mic'd up of the year. We'll look at, of course, our Chiefs keys for the matchup against the Broncos coming up. We'll chat with Zach Stevens of DNVR about the Broncos, get some thoughts on whatever is going down in Denver. Going to preview the Sugar Bowl for K-State and Alabama, get some final thoughts and predictions on that. Then, as we always finish the week with On Second Thought, instead of it being a weekly On Second Thought, it'll be our On Second Thought of the year. What was our essentially worst take of the year? I got mine. I'm going to try and get Jake's here since he's not with me on the show. But I have a pretty clear-cut runaway winner for my worst take of the year that I need to do over.
What sport was it?
Baseball.
Baseball? Oh, I know what it is. I know what this one is.
It was a doozy.
If you know what Fulton's year-long future bet was for the Royals, I think you might be able to guess what that one is.
There's a couple, but oh boy.
Fulton, we appreciate the time, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Always happy to be here.
We've got to take a break. What is wrong with you is up next on 580 Sports Talk. It is time for the semifinal round. The semifinal stupid, sinful, salacious, sadistic six for the Tournament of Champions, Tournament of Failed Champions for the 2022 edition of What Is Wrong With You. Yesterday, we cut the field from 12 to 6, our 12 monthly winners down to this half dozen, this hellacious half dozen. I can come up with more of them. I can do this absolutely all day. Our semifinalists, they're all from June or later. From June, the DC car destruction. July, the accidental splenectomy. That's I think my second favorite name on the list. Accidental splenectomy.
No other way to say it.
No,
what it was.
That's just nice, short, sweet, and to the point. That's a good headline right there. August's family funeral feud. October's Indian food idiot flambe. In November, we had the skeleton sex house. And in December, we had Chiefsaholic.
One texter on the Big O Tires text line from the 785 is a really big fan of the skeleton story. Texted in, "Let's go skeletons," before we even really got started today.
I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker. Let's go skeletons. That is wonderful. Shout out to our texter from the 785. All right. The way we're going to handle this today, Dan and I each have a list of 3 stories. I have a different piece of paper today that has a drawing in which Jake tried to direct me to how to get to the media seating at Rockhurst Gin, Mason Halpern Fieldhouse.
How is that hard?
Can you tell what this is? Are you able to tell anything that's going on in this picture?
No. If it was Pictionary, I would lose. I'm never playing Pictionary with Jake.
It's a school bus with the windshield popped out. Like, that's what this looks like.
It's dignity. What do you know when you see it?
So we've got, each of us, a 3-story list of the stories we want saved. If we have a duplicate on each of our lists, it is through. It is being passed through to the next round. Anywhere where we have some disagreement or we have different stories, we will discuss them here during this segment. Are you ready for our
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. My list in no particular order. We're going to start with my favorite name of the year. For our texter, not really, but also yes, it's the Skeleton Sex House. I have to put this one through.
The Skeleton Sex House is not on my list.
No, wow. All right. Well, let's mark that down. That goes into the debate folder. All right.
The first one on my list, the top of my list, is the family funeral feud.
I do not have that one on my list.
Wow. Okay.
We got drama. What a year. What a tremendous year. Oh, man. All right. Number 2 on my list. It was this month's winner. I had to go with Chiefsaholic.
Chiefsaholic is on my list.
And Chiefsaholic is on.
Chiefsaholic is on to the championship round. Again, we try not to be prisoners of the moment with our sports takes, and we try not to be prisoners of the moment when it comes to what is wrong with you. However, there are just so many layers to the Chiefsaholic story and so many possibilities. There's a very real chance that by January, February, like the legend of this story could grow. What if the FBI discovers that he's been pulling capers like this for the better part of the last 4 or 5 years? What if the Patrick Mahomes years coincide with a string of successful bank robberies by this guy funding his trips to see the Chiefs play on the road?
This dude was sitting in the Bixby, Oklahoma jail, eating bread and water, waiting for his day in court. Meanwhile, his 20,000 Twitter followers or whatever were freaking out, needing to do wellness checks. He didn't show up to the Houston game. What's going on?
That was the best they had. They called the 15 in the Mahomes Foundation and were like, maybe he left a driver's license there when he bought a painting. We can get his real government name. Maybe reach out to someone who knows and cares about him. Like his
we know what
bondsman.
painting he bought. Will you please give us his real name?
Full-scale panic. We won the division on Sunday, and we didn't hear from Chiefsaholic, the voice of the people.
I'm not going to ask him this. Do you think Mitch has a strong opinion on Chiefsaholic?
I bet he's run into Chiefsaholic.
I bet he has. I bet he certainly has.
There might be a picture.
In the wolf suit.
In the wolf suit.
All right, that's number 2 for me. So Chiefsaholic is in.
Speaking of the wolf suit, like initially there were people going crazy on social media and saying that, oh, they found a picture of a guy robbing a bank in a wolf suit. Oh, this must be Chiefsaholic. It turns out it was not that guy. That was a separate bank robbery in 2016. Well, number one, maybe it wasn't a different guy. Maybe it was him doing the thing. Who knows? But the other part is, if he had robbed the bank wearing the Chiefsaholic costume, there would be no need for any of this. He would be the easy champion of 2022.
That's true. That is correct. He was wearing a mask.
He was. We know he was wearing a mask. It's in the police report.
I would have to imagine he was not wearing the costume or his specific mask, just because that'd be too identifiable. But at the same time, he does not exactly seem like a Mensa member to me.
No, he's a career criminal.
So maybe that is within the realm of possibility. All right. You've got your number 2 then. Unless
it was Chiefsaholic.
Okay.
Yeah, Chiefsaholic was on my list. So you've got your number 3 on your list.
Number 3 on my list, I mentioned it a moment ago, back from July in the dog days of summer. It was the accidental splenectomy. A doctor removed the wrong organ from a woman. He took out her spleen. That was not what she was scheduled to have removed.
The accidental splenectomy is not on my list. I have the DC car destruction on my list. The woman whose car was impounded and destroyed by Washington, D.C.
Oh, man.
Because she had the unfortunate circumstance of being away to care for her sick mother while they were running a marathon outside of her building. They moved it to They moved it from being legally parked, but a hindrance to the marathon, to illegally parked, and then moved it from being illegally parked to the impound lot, and then made it from a vehicle to a cube.
And she was unaware the whole time.
Completely unaware. So here's how I think we should do this. We each have 2 stories that were not on the other's list.
Okay.
I think we pit those against each other. So your 2 would-be finalists that didn't go through, and my 2 would-be finalists that didn't go through. And because they are so near and dear to our hearts, the other gets to pick. So I have the family funeral feud, the feuding brother and sister who tore up a funeral. There are so many rich details in that story. It was between 8 to 20 family members, just this huge range of people possibly involved. The brother tried to run his sister over with his car, missed, hit somebody else, didn't kill him, thank goodness.
Yeah.
There were enough dead people in the cemetery as it was. Damaged some vases and some headstones, hit a water main, flooded the funeral plot, and then knocked over the coffin. At the point where the brother got out of the car, he was then attacked with a cane by another funeral goer.
I had forgotten that detail. I love that part so much.
Family funeral feud, DC car destruction. Clearly, I love these 2 very much, but you get to pick which one goes through.
I think I am going to lean with the family funeral feud. And the reason why, I think this embodies the spirit of what is wrong with you more than the DC car destruction. We know what's wrong with Washington, D.C.
But pish.
Yeah. I think that's a little easier to figure out. These people, these siblings, their mother had died. They could not put aside their squabbling for, I'll admit, I've never been to a funeral, but I can't imagine they're that long. Like an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. I don't know.
On the long side, man. I mean, if you're Catholic.
Yeah. It depends on how long the religious figure wants to speak for. They couldn't set it aside for just a little bit to honor their mom. Just stand on opposite sides of the plot, the coffin, whatever. Just let it be. Your group is with you. Her group is with her. Like, just be apart. Don't talk to each other for the sake of your mom. No, they had to turn it into an epic, like a children's sitcom on Nickelodeon.
A version of the 24/7 hardcore championship match.
Yeah. Raven was going to come out next. I think I'm going to lean with that one. It's just so truly, what is wrong with you? How can you not set aside your fighting and your squabbling for an hour to pay respects to your own mom? And you have to fight, and you end up turning it into a mud wrestling pit.
And yes, and again, the slapstick elements of the destroyed funeral plot because it got flooded, the coffin falling over, and I'm sure like the hush that fell over the funeral attendees when the only sound you could hear are some gasps and the coffin hitting the ground and water rushing out of the pipe into the funeral plot. And then as the brother gets out of his car, his wrecked car, he gets domed by somebody wielding a cane.
I love that detail of it. I forgot about the cane part. Yeah, that's my pick.
So Family Funeral Feud joins Chiefsaholic. We have one more to pick. Your two finalists.
Let me mark this down real quick. So we've got the DC car destruction is out. Great run, but it comes up a little bit short. Meanwhile, it joins the Indian food idiot flambe. That's the only story that did not make our list, but a great story nonetheless.
That's indicative of how great this year of What Is Wrong With You was. We thought 5 of these stories belonged in the finals.
This man lit himself on fire over an incorrect chicken order at an Indian restaurant. My two stories, they are the skeleton sex house and the accidental splenectomy.
So the accidental splenectomy was my story back in July. You were actually not around for the initial airing of the accidental splenectomy story. It was Fulton Castor was filling in on What Is Wrong With You. This woman went in for, I don't know how routine an operation having a kidney removed is.
I would assume relatively so.
But I feel like it's pretty common anymore that, like, hey, sometimes you get bad kidney. They got to go in, they got to get it out, or they got to replace it. Got to transplant it. But instead of having her kidney removed, this poor woman, Sarah Jane Parfit was her name, from Fresno, California, had her spleen removed, which creates a whole other set of problems for her in her life that didn't exist before, compounds the idea that she had an infected, diseased kidney. And I love the attorney for the woman, Paul Pimentel, quoted in the article as saying, calling the surgical error insane. I've never heard of this in this community. It is remarkable, some of the quotes again from Pimentel. The doctor does not want this case to follow him. This is so egregious, they should settle. Also, you had the mistake undetected for several days until the kidney was examined after it was sent to a pathologist. The pathologist was so astonished, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He called in 4 other pathologists to look. Like,
oh my God.
And 5 out of 5 pathologists agreed you took out her freaking spleen and not the diseased kidney. Anyway, I do love that story a lot. The other story is the skeleton sex house, which it's our most juvenile entry in this year's What Is Wrong With You. It's just a guy in Ohio who was posing his toy skeletons in flagrante delicto in his yard, blocks from a middle school. And when people asked him, hey, could you not do that? He said, no, I simply must.
A neighbor identified as Phil in this story from Fox 8 Ohio says, it's a serious thing. There's lots of kids in this neighborhood. It's a heavy neighborhood for families, so it's something. You've got a school. You've got tons of churches. Obviously, it's not something they want in their neighborhood. Then the mayor described it as disappointing and unfortunate. Called the homeowner 2 weeks before Halloween. This story was published in November. It had been weeks that this was up. And said, hey, would you be willing to take this down since you live right next to a school? Never got a call back and said, oh, I can't order them to take it down.
My hands are tied. We asked. We have no legal recourse. We asked. He said no.
We have a blurred picture, a blurred image from the Fox 8 News outside of Cleveland.
Yeah.
It's only partially blurred. You can see exactly what is happening. It is, I mean, like hardcore. It is so funny, so simple, and the defiance of this man to just refuse to change course and to say, yeah, I'll take it down. So, no, my skeletons that are banging are going to stay up all year.
So I don't like to set a potentially bad precedent. Our guy Vance on the YouTube comments has offered me $1 to pick the skeleton sex house. I don't like to set the possible precedent that bribery could be a way to advance stories through on What Is Wrong With You. But we also have our texter from earlier in the program who texted, "Let's go Skeletons." We also have another texter from the 785 who texted, "Please, please, please, Skeleton Sex House, make it to the finals. I'm more nervous about how this will turn out than I was during the KU game last night." I am nothing if not a man of the people. And maybe this says something about our listeners that our most juvenile story of the year is going to go through into the final round. But when I think back on it, I don't think there was a single day of What Is Wrong With You where I laughed harder, both at our reaction, at the story itself, at the text line reaction, than the Skeleton Sex House story. So for those reasons, I choose the Skeleton Sex House as our final finalist. We are down to the fail 3.
It is just so stupid. Like, it's just so dumb. I can't get over it. Oh, my God. And like we said at the time, you are now forever the Skeleton Sex House.
Yes,
that's what you are
that's
forever.
what they call him in Willoughby, Ohio. Definitely. 100%.
Those are our finalists for What Is Wrong With You, the final 3.
So what we're going to do is tomorrow, actually a little bit later on today, we're going to put a poll up on our Twitter page. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, now's a great time to. Twitter.com/sportson580. Follow us at sportson580. We're going to have links to all 3 stories, and then we're going to have a poll, and you can vote and decide who will win. We'll also take texts and YouTube comments throughout tomorrow's show leading up to our selection of the What Is Wrong With You champion of 2022, our 6th annual What Is Wrong With You champion, coming up around 4:30 tomorrow.
Can't wait for it. That's coming up just about halfway through the hour tomorrow, as Dan said. Right now, we need to take a quick break. We've got some bowl chatter coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk.
Speak with regional ag expert.
Back on 580 Sports Talk as we wrap up this 4 o'clock hour. The people, by the way, thrilled with Dan's decision to push through the Skeleton Sex House. And frankly, I am too. I love that story.
It's really funny. So sophomoric, but so funny.
To say the least. Coming up, in fact, right now, the Cheez-It Bowl is in action as Oklahoma takes on Florida State. That score at the moment is 3-0 Seminoles, but Oklahoma is in pursuit of its first points just about halfway through the first quarter We got Fulton's pick earlier. Do you think Florida State holds on to this one?
Yeah, I think Florida State's going to win.
Tonight, we've got Texas versus Washington. That is the Alamo Bowl. I really enjoyed watching Washington football over the course of this season. I really enjoy Michael Penix. He was incredible for them this season. Really glad he's coming back for next year as well. Washington is ranked 12th in the country. They are 10-2. Texas is 8-4. They're ranked 21st. And yet, Texas has been favored throughout the entire process leading up to tonight's kickoff for the Alamo Bowl, which in recent years has been a bowl game that has featured some crazy games. We remember Oregon versus TCU from a handful of years ago. That was one of the greatest bowl games I've ever seen. Certainly one of the best comebacks that I have ever seen. Are you going to ride with the favorite here? Something's too fishy. You got to pick the favorite, or are you going to take underdog Washington?
I think Washington wins. Again, you always wonder about motivation, right? And I just think Washington's motivation might be a little bit stronger than Texas's motivation. Although that being said, this is generally the time of year where Texas stomps on somebody in a bowl game, and we get to hear all offseason about how back they are. But on the flip side of that, I just don't see this being that kind of team. They don't have a Sam Ehlinger at quarterback to do that.
I was going to say, do we think Quinn Ewers is going to do that? Do we think Quinn Ewers is going to be at Texas past this game?
Well, Hudson Card is already transferred.
Uh-huh.
And I would think Ewers, if he's really that guy, like he should believe he's going to be the starting quarterback, and he should believe he's better than Arch Manning. I don't know if he is or not, but he should believe that he is.
He should believe it for sure, certain. Yeah, I'm going to go with Washington here too. I just think they're the better team. They got the better quarterback. I think they are better coached as well. I think DeBoer is such a freaking good coach. I really do. So I'm going to take Washington as well, but that line is so fishy, it makes me feel like something is up that I'm not aware of. Not having Bijan or Roschon Johnson, obviously huge for the Longhorns.
Yeah, I mean, they got the third string kid had 100 yards against Kansas. So
Brooks,
Brooks. It's not like he's a bum. Like they're going to be able to run the ball, but I think they won't be nearly as effective. They won't. I mean, give it to Bijan was their get out of jail card for that offense for most of the season. And they may try and be successful, hit on some deep shots to Xavier Worthy, who's such a dynamic talent. But I think Washington's pass rush is actually kind of decent and should be able to have some success, move Ewers off of his targets a little bit and, slow their passing game a bit. And I don't see how Texas slows Washington's passing game. I think Washington will move the ball at will.
Real quick, after the Liberty Bowl was done yesterday, did you see any of Texas Tech beaten down on Ole Miss?
I did. I'm going to keep saying this. I'll shout it from the rooftops. I don't know how many conference championships they're going to win, but as long as Joey McGuire is at Texas Tech, and he just signed a 6-year, $26 million extension yesterday, as long as he's there, they are going to be the least enjoyable day on the schedule for Big 12 teams. I just think they are building an identity, and I think they are going to be just a pain in the butt to play against. They've got the capability, I think, to contend for some conference championships with Joey McGuire around. I really like where that program is headed.
I'm with you. I think they are going to be a really, really tough out for a long time. They're building the program the right way. I like that Texas Tech team. To use the overused, although maybe fading slightly out of the public view slang term, that whole team got that dog in them. The entire team at Texas Tech. We've got to take a break for our national and local news here at the top of the hour, but when we come back to lead off the 5 o'clock hour, we've got our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We will preview what could be a disastrous Thursday night football game tonight between the Cowboys and Titans, and we'll preview Chiefs-Broncos with the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. It's all coming up in the 5 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk.
Are you looking for an alternative?
1 hour to go on 580 Sports Talk, the penultimate edition of 580 Sports Talk for calendar year 2022. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero joining you for the next hour. Coming up on this hour of 580 Sports Talk, we've got our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines here in just a moment. We'll also preview Thursday night football, and the voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, is going to join us coming up a little bit later on this hour, bottom of the hour, in fact, to preview Chiefs versus Broncos round 2. A game I think everybody around the world, including probably every single Broncos fan, even the biggest homer, is going to pick the Chiefs to win. We'll talk to Mitch, too, about what it was like to bang the drum and to call the start of the game from the drum deck in the freezing cold. So that's coming up at the bottom of the hour. You are welcome to join the show on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. You can also hit us up in the comments section on our YouTube live stream. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel where you can watch the show as well as interact with it. Don't forget that coming up tonight as well, 6:45 pregame, 7 o'clock tip-off from Lee Arena on the campus of Washburn University. Our Dan Lucero will be on the call for some Washburn women's basketball as Laura Westling's Ichabods take on the Bethany Terrible Swedes, although they don't include terrible in their name anymore.
I wouldn't have ever done that, probably, but it was at least unique.
Yeah, it was very unique. Although Swedes in and of itself is probably unique too. I can't imagine there are many Swedes.
I think I've only ever seen one other, and it was Gothenburg High School in Gothenburg, Nebraska, which is not far from North Platte, where I spent 3.5 years covering high school and junior college sports in my younger days. So the Gothenburg Swedes I know of, and the Bethany College Swedes. I'm sure there are others. I just don't know of them.
According to a very quick Wikipedia search, there is only one Swedes in America, and it is indeed Bethany.
How about that?
There are a lot of these that are only like one. How do I want to phrase this? There are a lot of unique names out there. Some are better than others. However, there are lots of like Vikings and things like that, but not many Swedes. Wikipedia includes those in their Western European groups category.
Okay.
Not big enough for Vikings, I guess, but just groups from Western Europe.
What else? What else qualifies as a mascot that's from a Western European group?
So we've got
Celtics, perhaps.
Yes. So we've got and this is just college teams. The Carlow Celtics in Pittsburgh. I've never heard of Carlow before.
Me either.
There's a Catholic university in Pittsburgh. The Albion College Britons.
Okay.
In Michigan. The Alfred Saxons. That's in New York. St. Thomas of Texas is the Celts.
Sure.
And then you've got the Fighting Irish from Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, they are a little more common. Wow, I'm going to lose my entire night looking at this list. I got to bookmark this page.
Please send it to me in a Twitter DM.
I absolutely will. All right, let's get to our first preview for tonight's game.
So it is obviously the first game back from the holiday break for both of these teams. Washburn trying to start the second portion of their season on a high note after they lost 3 of 4 in MIAA play coming in, trying to get their offense back on track too. They averaged just 48.5 points in those 4 games, 1 win and 3 defeats in MIAA play to start. So they're going to hope to get on track against a Bethany team that has already played an exhibition game for them against an MIAA team. They lost to Fort Hays State 80-46 on December 19th. Bethany is a pretty solid KCAC program, pretty consistent 20-win team, pretty consistently at the top of their league. Right now, they're half a game out of first in the KCAC through 8-9 games of their conference season. So this will be a tough challenge. It's a game that, again, you would expect Division II versus NAIA. There would be an advantage for the Division II team. That's typically how these things go. But Washburn can't take this one for granted. Bethany will fight them tonight.
And earlier this month, or earlier this season anyway, I guess it was technically last month, Washburn got all it could handle from another NAIA team from just down the road when they took on Haskell in a last-minute game that was put together. So certainly will be a tough from their NAIA foes tonight. We've got a question for you, Dan, from the 402. Shout out to Omaha. Did you ever call games in Omaha when you worked in North Platte?
So, yeah, I called a couple of games at I called a football game at Papillion La Vista, Papio, they call it. It's called a football game at Papillion La Vista, called a couple basketball games at Papillion La Vista South or Papio South. Bellevue East. I think I did a football game at Bellevue East High School. And most of the games I did, though, were in Lincoln or like Grand Island, Kearney, that area. But did make it on a few occasions out to Omaha, and always stopped in Big Mama's Kitchen when I did.
Dan took me to Big Mama's Kitchen when we were there for the NCAA tournament in 2018. We were following KU's run to the Final Four that year.
Mm-hmm.
Delicious. Absolutely.
You
phenomenal.
had a chicken fried steak that was, and I'm not joking here, the size of a catcher's mitt.
It was gigantic. And, dude, it was so good. It was so freaking good.
Love Omaha. Got a lot of love for Omaha. So that's a cool city. One of my favorites.
I agree. My wife and I went up there. Was that early 2021? I think it must have been. We had a great time. It was a lot of fun up in Omaha. Underrated city. I would definitely give it that kind of moniker. All right, let's get to our headlines. They are, as always, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. You can visit them online at blue.kansas.com for all your heating and cooling needs. It's nice out today, by the way. Might not need the heater on right now, although this past week you certainly did. Hit up Blue Dot for all your needs in that department. Headline number one for me today. Let's get to the practice report for the Chiefs and the Broncos. Things are looking quite good for the Chiefs for Sunday's matchup against the Broncos. Prince Tega Wanogo, due to an illness, he was the only DNP of the active roster players for the Chiefs today. All the other players who were full but listed yesterday, including Michael Burton, Noah Gray, Derek Nottie, Andrew Wiley, all still full participants in practice today. Here's the one downside, and I never saw a follow-up on this, but beat reporters for the Chiefs at practice today did not see Mecole Hardman practicing with the rest of the group. Now, he does not get a designation because he's not on the active roster while he's on injured reserve. Maybe it was just a one-day thing. Maybe he was working off to the side. I don't know for certain. Obviously, I was not there. That would be a bummer if he had a bit of a setback, though. They don't need him this week, but that would be a bummer.
Yeah, because they can activate him without activating him to the 53-man. Like they're in that 21-day window, and if they feel like, okay, he maybe needs another week, but we don't think he can play, they can still activate him from IR, but then they can have him on the inactive list. So this is not like an emergency situation yet for Mecole Hardman. But yeah, a little bit curious that he wasn't working out at the open portion of practice.
As for the Broncos, their report got a little bit better today than it was yesterday, but it's still not especially good. They ended up with 5 DNPs. That includes tackle Calvin Anderson, outside backer Baron Browning, who's dealing with a back issue. That's never good. Tight end Greg Dulcich with a hamstring, Randy Gregory with a knee, and defensive tackle DJ Jones also dealing with a knee injury. All 5 of those players were DNPs yesterday and also today. Your limited participants for today, for the second day in a row, that includes receiver Kendall Hinton, receiver Jerry Jeudy, who was busy with the Twitter fingers today talking about his quarterback, Russell Wilson.
You know, maybe he wouldn't have to defend what he thinks of Russell Wilson if it wasn't so visibly apparent what he thinks of playing with Russell Wilson. Every time he pouts, every time he throws a fit, every time he acts like a toddler, should have gotten thrown out of the Kansas City game. Like, yes, Jerry Jeudy's body language has sucked since week 1. And so it's nice that he's going on Twitter to defend his teammate, but you could act like a better teammate, like where everybody can see you.
I agree with that. 100%. Also on the limited list for the Broncos, interior offensive lineman Quinn Miners dealing with ribs, and for the second day in a row, wide receiver Cortland Sutton as well, dealing with a hamstring injury. Mike Purcell, defensive lineman, he was limited after not practicing at all yesterday, so he's improving. Same with corner Kawan Williams with a knee. He was limited today after not practicing yesterday. One player who was limited yesterday, K-State great Dalton Reisner, friend of the program. He was a full participant. Good to see for him. And 4 players for the Broncos who were resting or took personal days, including Kareem Jackson, Latavius Murray, Billy Turner, and Deshaun Williams. They were all DNPs yesterday, back to practice in full today.
From the Big O Tires text line from the 785, the Broncos are going to be signing Colorado School of Mines walk-ons to the roster. Hey, be nice to the best football team in the state of Colorado.
That might have been a compliment. That, hey, they had a great year. Call some of that group up. We know they're smart. They have to take like 4 calculus classes, all of them. And obviously a lot of engineering classes.
The Colorado School of Mines and Air Force were the 2 best teams in the state of Colorado for the 2021 football season. Smarter and better at football than any other football program in the state, including the professional program.
I was going to say, the bar is really
it's on the
really low.
It's on the floor.
Colorado State was awful. Colorado was awful.
They're coming, though. You hear that?
I've heard. Dion has told me. Did you see in the most blatant like mask off, we are going to prop up our media partners more than actually like being honest about the sport move of the year. Fox Sports named Shader Sanders their preseason favorite to win the Heisman already. Come on, man.
Like, I know they got 5 linemen in from the portal, but they had the worst offensive line in the country this last year. And the guys they got from the portal, like good players at their schools, but not like good players from Alabama or, like the SEC. Like, they had some JUCO All-Americans, which that doesn't mean they can't play.
Yeah.
Just let's pump the brakes on the prime university hype just a little bit.
I think, Shader Sanders, he was really good at the FCS. He might be a really good Power 5 quarterback. I really don't think it's fair to make an assumption because I don't know. Travis Hunter was the number 1 recruit in the country for a reason. He was obviously great at Jackson State. It's different when you got to face Utah's defense that sends defensive players to the NFL every single year. When you've got to face the athletes at Oregon, it's a different beast.
Yeah,
it really is. We've also got a text in asking about Colorado Mesa. Tough year for the Mavs, 4-6.
Yeah, they'll always be Mesa State to me.
When did they change the name? I don't know.
Like a decade ago. It's been a while.
Oh, okay. Yeah, CSU Pueblo. I don't know how they did this year.
They used to be very good. They
were a national title not that long ago.
Yeah, that was a very strong Division II program for some years.
There's been a pretty decent football conference over time, the RMAC.
Yeah.
Relatively decent.
Shattered State, Danny Woodhead. They weren't RMAC school. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have another texture from the 785. Isn't Brett ripping out with a bruised chest because of Dalton Reisner? Might be. That team is like sad. Not that I'm sad for them, but it's sad right now for Denver, as we've been over many times.
First headline for me is a sports story that touches the entire globe, as today at the age of 82, Pelé passed away. He was born Edson Arantes do Nascimento in Brazil in 1940 and became the greatest soccer player the world had ever known and perhaps has ever known. He was also a tremendous ambassador, not just for the sport, but also literally for UNESCO and the United Nations. He was the Minister of Sport in Brazil as well, lived a rich and full life, and was as much a sports idol as anyone who has ever lived has ever been in the world. It is a very short list of athletes who can claim to have matched or exceeded the global popularity of Pelé in his prime. And frankly, I'm not sure anyone has ever exceeded the global popularity of Pelé in his prime. Synonymous with the sport of soccer. Probably if you asked anyone the last 60 years to name a soccer player, he would be the first one on the list. He's the only player to have won 3 World Cups, scored a preposterous number of goals, and made the Brazil number 10 jersey iconic in his career. He scored 95 goals wearing the Brazil shirt, 77 in official matches, and also was a key part of making soccer popular in the United States when he came to join the New York Cosmos of the American Soccer League, North American Soccer League, rather, in 1975. Pelé passed away today after a long fight with cancer at the age of 82.
I think you're right about that I'm not, if you just asked any random, maybe not people younger than us, but anyone our ages or older would, like, Pelé, I'm sorry about the pronunciation. Would say, like,
Pelé is the Americanized version of the pronunciation.
See, I thought it was the other way around, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
Would bring him up as, a soccer player. Yeah, or they would say Ronaldo, which is probably cheating because they might not know which one they're talking about.
Yeah, probably from 1958 to about 2005. If you asked 10 people to name a soccer player, 10 of them are giving you Pelé. If you asked 199 would give you Pelé.
Yeah.
Now it's, there's Messi, and certainly Diego Maradona had a wonderful career. What's fascinating about Pelé in that context is every other global soccer superstar, even some who preceded Pelé, like Alfredo Di Stefano, the great Argentinian star, and then those who would come after, Johan Cruyff, the Dutch legend, Diego Maradona, who I already mentioned, the first Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Kylian Mbappe, today's best young player. All of them were great on a global stage, And that big part of that was their club team. It wasn't just what they did for their countries. It was a lot what they did for their clubs. You can identify all of those players I just named with the club that they play for. You identify Cruyff with Barcelona. You identify Messi with Barcelona. You identify Ronaldo with first Manchester United, then Real Madrid. Di Stefano, Real Madrid. Maradona, it was Napoli in Italy. These world famous soccer clubs that won their domestic leagues and were great on a domestic scale, on a European scale. Their club fame probably outweighed their international fame. And of course, for our modern stars, it came because we could watch that's available to watch. Their international soccer matches and their club soccer matches are available everywhere. With Pele, it was basically just what he did in the World Cup that people could see. He never played really in Europe. He played the bulk of his prime years, his club football, club soccer in Brazil. He played for a club called Santos and was fabulously successful there. Once estimated he scored 1,200 goals while playing for Santos. Now, how hard were the teams trying in some of those friendlies that he was talking about? But that was his estimation. So he never went to Europe to get famous as a soccer player. He was famous enough and beloved enough and revered enough, basically just based on what he did when he was at the World Cup, which, I mean, it's only a handful of games, right? The World Cup's only but a handful of games, 6 to 8 games. And for him to have built his legend starting when he was 17 years old in the 1958 World Cup, that just tells you how incandescently great he was. He would have been great in any era. He would have been an all-timer in any era. And it is also noteworthy, again, not just what he did on the field, but also his work as an ambassador off the field and the things that he stood for away from soccer as well.
Yeah, truly a great sporting life. Play dead at the age of 82. Next headline for me on our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. A much different note with this one, but a weird headline that came out earlier today, initially reported by Pete Thamel of ESPN. Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren has emerged as a top candidate to be the next president/CEO of the Chicago Bears. He is interviewed in person for that job and is considered among the final candidates. The process is expected to wrap up in the upcoming weeks. The Big Ten released a statement about Kevin Warren after this, which was just a bunch of word salad that made me even more convinced that he's leaving to become the CEO of the Bears. He previously worked for the Minnesota Vikings and had worked in professional circles for a long time before becoming the commissioner of the Big Ten. I think a lot of people, when he got that job with the Big Ten, were surprised at bringing an NFL guy in. You sure about that? I don't know about this decision. It would make sense if you wanted to go back to the pro world, but this really came out of nowhere for a league that has been so aggressive to all of a sudden, it sort of feels like they're slamming on the brakes and their commissioner is dipping out. It's not necessarily a good move or a bad move which way, but that's a lot of turnover for a conference. You don't see that all that often.
No.
Warren hasn't been on the job all that long.
No, he really hasn't. 3-4 years. And in just that short period of time, has obviously overseen some pretty seismic changes in the Big Ten and in the world of college athletics. I think it was Stuart Mandel who alluded that Warren has always kind of wanted to get back into professional football in some form or fashion. And this may be the best opportunity, the best time for him to do it. And that may be why he jumps. But who's to say whoever takes over his job has the same vision for the future of the Big 12 or Big Ten and the future of college athletics that Kevin Warren did. So it could be very fascinating to follow this story if indeed Kevin Warren does leave.
Because the question then is, when you replace him, congrats, you're taking on this job that's going to include a lot of money being pumped into your conference, but do you want to deal with what comes with USC and UCLA? Like, is that the vision you have for the future of this league? It's just very interesting. It sounds like he's going to take the job. And I mean, again, I wouldn't necessarily blame him, but turning it around that quickly is just very strange to me. Any other headlines for you?
Yeah, one last quick headline for you. Jalen Hurts is back to practice for the Philadelphia Eagles, practicing for the first time today since he suffered his injury against the Chicago Bears December 18th. He's listed as a limited participant on the participation report by the Eagles today. The Eagles can clinch the number 1 seed in the NFC if they beat the Saints on Sunday. I think they can beat the Saints without Jalen Hurts. Be interested to see what direction they go. Obviously, Hurts will want to play if he's able, but the prudent thing for the Eagles might be to see if they can beat the Saints with Gardner Minshew, because I think they can.
I think they can too. The Saints are awful. They're not well coached. They are really bad. We were talking earlier in the week about what if Sean Payton was interested in coming back and what are the Saints going to do? Might they make it a one and done situation with Dennis Allen? According to, and I want to make sure I know exactly which beat writer this was, but I saw a prominent writer for the Saints come out and say, I got to go and make sure I know who this was. I want to give credit to it. Nick Underhill, who has covered the Saints for a long time, has his own Saints website, in fact, neworleans.football. He reported yesterday that he would be very surprised if Dennis Allen is not coaching next year for the Saints. So that might quell some of the buzz, but I think strengthens my belief that maybe they're just going to tank and just let him go down with the ship and then hire someone better come the year after. Because they're not going anywhere with Dennis Allen.
No.
And I think you were 100% right. If no one else would hire him, that's not necessarily a good hire.
If you're hiring a coach nobody else would have hired, you have hired the wrong coach.
So I agree. I think if the Eagles play like they did against the Cowboys, it wasn't great. They did end up losing, but that's good enough to beat most other teams, especially bad teams. I think they can win without Hurts for another week. Rest him up. Make sure he's ready to go for the postseason. They can win without him. One other thing I wanted to do real quickly here before we get to a quick commercial break. College basketball, just some news and notes. We haven't talked much college hoops over the course of the week so far. Last night, big game in the SEC. Missouri beat Kentucky. Next week, Missouri is going to be ranked, I think. Kentucky might not be.
Kentucky's getting, Missouri is getting better. I got to give Dennis Gates a lot of credit. I was not impressed with them against Kansas, but I think they have found an identity, and their identity is Kobe Brown as a bull in a china shop. Right now, he is playing fantastic. Like, he's playing like an All-American these last handful of games. And Mizzou has put together, I think they're 13-1 now after that win last night. Got to give them a lot of credit. They've discovered an identity. Kobe Brown's playing great. Very impressed with what Dennis Gates is starting to put together there in Columbia. The flip side of this, Kentucky is a wreck.
Yep.
Kentucky is an absolute dumpster fire. And the lucky thing for them is they get to play an even bigger dumpster fire on Saturday when they take on Louisville.
That's going to be a hideous game. SEC is pretty good this year, man.
I think it's the Louisville beat writer for The Athletic, Kyle Tucker, who said, hey, don't watch this game. It's Louisville, Kentucky. It's the biggest rivalry in the state of Kentucky. Do not watch this game. Watch football instead.
Good Lord. That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. We need to take a quick timeout. We'll come back, preview Thursday Night Football after this on 580 Sports Talk. night, Thursday Night Football, final Thursday night game of the year, in fact, and it could be awful. It is the Cowboys against the Titans.
The Titans are treating this like week 2 of the preseason.
Yeah, they don't care. They are. They just need to win next week, and they'll be fine. And it shows. They're going to play Josh Dobbs over Malik Willis, which does not bode especially well for Malik Willis.
Doesn't feel really good for Malik Willis, does it? Well, Tannehill's out. They put him on injured reserve, so he's done. He's not going to play again this year. So, like, who are they going to give the ball to with the division title on the line? I think that this might be a chance to see if they maybe have something in Dobbs, and if they don't, they go back to Willis next week for the division title. That, or that's how far out of favor Malik Willis has fallen in just 16 weeks, which would be very unfortunate for him,
to say the least. No kidding. Maybe they just really feel like it does need to be a redshirt year of some sort. I saw the other day when he had like 3 yards through the first half of their game. Oh my God. Not great. I don't know what they're going to do. I think the Cowboys are going to roll them. Cowboys are favored by 13.5. That's a lot on a short week, but I don't know what the Titans are going to do. They're so banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Their offense is dreadful. Cowboys still have something to play for.
Yeah.
So
a lot of Hassan Haskins tonight for Tennessee. Probably a lot of Ezekiel Elliott for Dallas because Tony Pollard is out for the Cowboys. So that bit of explosiveness will not exist. I expect Dak Prescott to throw the ball quite a bit and have a solid game. And I don't think Dallas is going to have any problem tonight.
Any particular bet you're interested in?
There is a bonus at FanDuel. If you are curious, a little odds boost today from our friends at FanDuel. Dak Prescott to throw for 200 yards and the Cowboys to win straight up on the money line. That has been boosted to even money odds, plus 100. You bet $5 and it happens, you get $5 and your bet back. You bet $100, you get $100. I think Prescott is going to clear 200 yards with relative ease, and I think the Cowboys are going to win with relative ease. So maybe you want to play that one from our friends at FanDuel today. Promo code Lucero.
We'll be right back after this when we'll talk to the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, here on 580 Sports Talk. back on 580 Sports Talk, the penultimate 580 Sports Talk for calendar year 2022. I'm Brendan Dworzynski. Dan is on his way to Lee Arena for some Washburn women's basketball tonight against the Swedes of Bethany. That game can be heard over on Legendary Country 106.9. 7 o'clock tip-off tonight, 6:45 pregame over on 106.9 KTPK. Hopefully the Washburn women can head into 2023 with a win, and hopefully we can say the same about the Kansas City Chiefs coming up on New Year's Day on Sunday. And with that, what a perfect segue, we bring in our good friend, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. He joins us every Thursday during the Chiefs season, brought to you as always by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. And Mitch, before we get to this past weekend against the Seahawks, before we get to this coming weekend against the Denver Broncos, I've got to ask you, how cool was it to get to bang the drum and to get to start the broadcast this past weekend up there on the drum deck at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium?
Well, you asked how cool it was. I will tell you it was cold. They said the temperature -4 wind chill at kickoff. It was colder up on that drum deck, especially after I'd done field pass down on the sideline, and the drink I was holding in my hand, like an energy drink, like electrolytes, froze in my hand. It was that cold, but it was a phenomenal experience. I felt like I was back playing football for Smith Center again. I wanted to hit somebody, and it was just such a rush to beat that drum 30 times, by the way, if you're keeping track and want to watch the video. And then as soon as I hit it for the 30th time, the PA announcer is kicking off for Seattle. And so I just grabbed the headset and took off doing play-by-play. One series for the Chiefs, one series for the Seahawks. And then it was a comical. I wish there was a GoPro on that, because I had to take 2 separate elevators. My wife was actually helping me. There's a picture on Instagram that's funny of her helping me. But then 3 security officers get me from the drum deck to one elevator down to the club level, which is the 4th level, to sprint actually around 90 degrees around the stadium to get to the bank of elevators that takes me up to the 9th level that I'm on at Arrowhead, GHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. So it was crazy, man. It was nuts. And but it was an adrenaline rush, I got to tell you. It was also exhausting, and it was so cold, but it was a rush nonetheless. Thrill of a lifetime.
No, I can only imagine. So I've got to ask them, because obviously you've been doing this for a long time, Mitch, doing it from the drum deck, obviously much different angle of the field from up there. Where does that rank among the most unique perspectives and places you've ever called the game from?
Honestly, it's somewhat similar. I did a game in Tokyo once from the end zone, which would be and the upper deck, which would be the same vantage point. Truthfully, Super Bowl 54 in Miami, where they stuck us, was in a corner, but that high from a similar vantage point, meaning the Chiefs' first drive was on the opposite end of the field. So you really don't have any perspective of yard loss. You're not looking down on the field. You're looking at it from the end zone. So you can't, is that the 35 or the 25? You don't know. But then when the Chiefs punted, there was a penalty on the Seahawks. The Seahawks were backed up. They were at their own 7-yard line. It is right in front of me. So I said, I'm just on a drone hovering over these guys. It's kind of fun down here. I could see everything. I saw Joshua Williams' awesome 3rd down play and tackle of Kenneth Walker III better than anybody unless they were down on the field. So it depended where the ball was. But I've had very similar vantage points. Washington's that way. And Super Bowl 57 or 55 wasn't as bad. Super Bowl 54 wasn't very good at all.
We're talking to the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, kind enough to join us here on 580 Sports Talk, courtesy of Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. That is awesome, Mitch. And yeah, definitely go check out the Instagram post to see what it was like for Mitch, as best as we can anyway, during that incredible experience this past weekend. I do want to get to that game in particular, And I actually want to start on the defensive side of the ball, Mitch, because the Chiefs come away. They win 24-10, 2-score win over a team fighting for a playoff spot, finally get to be back at home. All great things for this Chiefs team. But in that third quarter in particular, the Chiefs defense, the offense was a little bit slower in that period, but the defense really stepped up and played really well. Each team scored a touchdown late, but by that point, it was pretty much academic for the rest of the game. What'd you make of the way the defense played? I think a lot of the public, a lot of fans, maybe Chiefs haters too, have been very critical of the defense as of late. What do you think about the way that they were able to perform in the second half to really keep the Seahawks at bay?
I was very encouraged by their performance, but there were 3 plays that stood out to me, and they were the 3 fourth-down stops. I was just talking with Andy Reid about it today. I mean, the Chiefs now have to end with Steve Spagnuolo in a set-down that I had with Steve, that the Chiefs now have to get in a mode that it's almost in fourth-down defensive mode every series. I don't care where the ball's at, especially this week against a team that who knows what Denver's going to do. But in the case of Seattle, going for it 6 times, stopping them 3 times, and it was all 3 done by rookies. The pass broken up by Holthus. Well, that play's probably going to be complete for a first down. And then 2 open field tackles on a very cold day, a difficult day to tackle, one by Brian Cook, rookie, another by Trent McDuffie, rookie. To me, those were the plays that stood out. And then to get the interception from Thornhill. But to get those fourth down stops, those are, in essence, a turnover. And for the rookies to do all 3 of them speaks volumes about, I think, the progress the rookies are making and some of the confidence these guys are playing with defensively.
On the offensive side of things from this game, is there anything that really jumped out to you? You and I have talked so many times about how a lot of people, they gravitate toward the quote unquote fantasy football numbers, and there maybe weren't great ones in this game. Mahomes was pretty good, 16-28, 224, had the 2 touchdown passes, didn't turn it over. I think Pacheco had another solid, if not maybe spectacular game overall. A couple good receiving performances. Kelsey broke 100 again. But did any one performance or any one moment really stick out to you about the way the offense played against Seattle?
2 things. One is the obvious, and 2 is the not so obvious, and I'll give you maybe the nugget of the night. The obvious is the play of Travis Kelsey to get another 100-yard receiving game, to get 72 yards on back-to-back on the final touchdown drive that you were alluding to that put essentially the game out of reach at 24-3. But Kelsey now has 6 100-yard receiving games this season. That's the most by a tight end in NFL history. He now has 35 in his career. That's the most by a tight end in NFL history. And he's 28-7 in those 35 games. So it's not like he's piling up stats, he's winning games. That's the obvious. The not so obvious was the way that the Chiefs now are using essentially everybody. Think of the Kadarius Toney flip pass for a touchdown. McKinnon continues to be a machine. I mean, his 6 touchdowns in December tied for the most in the NFL. But it sets me up for the nugget of the night. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
The Chiefs have already set an all-time National Football League record. All-time. Since 1921, no team, not the greatest show on turf Rams, not Tom Brady with the Patriots, I don't know, not Bob Greasy with the Dolphins, no team in NFL history, and there's 2 weeks to go. The Chiefs have had 12 different players that have had at least 100-plus scrimmage yards and at least 2 touchdowns on the season. That's 12 of them. And so that comes to mind in light of what we saw against Seattle, because everybody kind of gets in on the act. And that's where I think the Chiefs team is being undersold in its brilliance in many ways, is the fact that Patrick Mahomes is having an NFL MVP kind of year. And 2, the fact that the Chiefs are doing historic things with the way they're using everybody at all different parts of the field. And that, I think, came for sure into light against the Seahawks.
And I know we've talked about this point over the course of the season, Mitch, but with all the narrative about Tyreek, and he's obviously an all-time great player, and he's having a great season this year, his first in Miami too, but so much of the narrative and early in the year, off-season, I know we're so deep into the year at this point, but can the offense keep up? Or maybe just a bold, the offense isn't going to be able to keep up that kind of pace without that sort of player. But I've been banging the drum, so to speak, all year, saying that, no, look, this team is now going to be able to diversify a little bit. It still has superstar players, and now you can get more guys involved. There's more depth among the receivers, among the runners. you can do a lot more. And I think as the season has gone on, and you can tell me if I'm barking up the right tree here, when you look at the impact, not just the Juju Smith-Schusters have had, because he was obviously a big name addition, but Jerick McKinnon has been incredible the last few weeks. Noah Gray has stepped up and become such an integral part of this offense as well. It just feels like right now the Chiefs are at a point, maybe more so than in any other recent year, where they can attack you in so many different ways, and it puts even more defenders on any given snap in a lot of conflict.
Where your hypothesis has been proven historically, right? Just by the numbers I gave you, that record, all-time NFL record, speaks to your point. There's even others here, but it's also with Patrick Mahomes, like, well, where's the productivity going to come? Mahomes is zeroing in on a 5,000-yard passing season. And if he gets, what is he at? He's 280 yards to get to that point, and he's headed for 40-plus touchdowns. That's only happened twice in NFL history. And it was Drew Brees to do it in 2011 and 2012. That's it. Not Tom Brady, not Peyton Manning. And so the productivity is still there. In many ways, it's more so. And the red zone numbers have been good. That's better than it was the last couple of years, where the red zone numbers are up to, fifth in the NFL. But that's the ability to attack the field horizontally in the red zone. So your hypothesis has been proven. And with 2 weeks to go, they've already set NFL history. There'll be more coming here as they get maybe a few more guys into the end zone with some touchdowns.
Just a couple more questions for the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, as he joins us here on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you, as always, by our good friends at both Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. So then, Mitch, as we look ahead to this coming weekend as the Chiefs take on the Denver Broncos, I think really the two big storylines here on the Chiefs side is they're still very much in the hunt for the number one seed in the AFC playoff picture. And on the other side for Denver, they have somehow become more of a tire fire than they were just a few weeks ago when these two teams faced off. They have fired Nathaniel Hackett. There's obviously been a lot of drama with their highly paid quarterback and players, and they're getting their Twitter fingers busy this week and all this. I mean, it's been such a mess of a season for Denver. So if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, is there anything in particular you have to do in a matchup like this? I know it's a rivalry and you should be tuned up for a rivalry, but is there anything you have to do to keep your focus when it feels like this is a game you should be able to cruise through?
Okay, let's take this from a defensive standpoint first, in that the Bronco offense has been poor at many ways, record levels of lack of production. Although their best half of football was against the Chiefs on December the 11th. And they put 28 points on the board, did a 67-yard screen and a short field touchdown. But you could argue if Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt with a concussion, that they might have won that game. All right. Okay, that being said, but you have to be ready for everything. And special teams I'll include in this because Jerry Rosburg is the interim coach. Now, his resume has been built on being a special teams coach for years and years for John Harbaugh in Baltimore, who was Coach Reid's special teams coach in Philadelphia. And what was interesting was Coach told me today, I'm going to get more into this, I think, on the Chiefs Kingdom show Monday night. He told me today that he was the first coach in NFL to have a quality control coach for the special teams coordinator. Now that's become like everybody does it. But that was the genesis of a Jerry Rosburg. Okay, you got to be ready for everything. Fake punts, onside kicks, pooch kicks, quick kicks, all kinds of stuff. Defensively, you almost have to put your team into 4-down mode right away. You're not defending 3 downs on a punt in this game. You're defending 4 downs all the time. And that 4th down might be a fake punt if they line up as a punt. The Chiefs have had to defend 31 4th down attempts this year. They're tied for the most in the league. Buffalo is the only other team that has had to defend as many at 31. That'll be more so. That'll be on steroids this week with Denver, who's got nothing to lose, an interim coach, and trying to do something. They're very frustrated about losing to the Chiefs 14 straight times. That just is a arrow to their heart and their pride. That's a very prideful franchise. Now, on the other side, offensively, you're still dealing with a playoff caliber defense. Don't be tricked by the 51 points the Rams put on the Broncos last Sunday afternoon, because that 51 points was a pick six and two other turnovers that gave very short fields to the Rams. The numbers are still there for the Denver Broncos defensively, and the fact that they can pressure, the fact that they play a lot of zone. Now, they play 80% in some semblance of a cover three kind of defense. And Patrick Mahomes this year against the cover three defense and against zones in particular, and when he's pressured against the zone, his quarterback rating is only 58.6%. He has 7 touchdowns and 6 interceptions when pressured playing against a cover three kind of zone. And that's the 3 picks he had against Denver. So you've got to be better against the zone, recognizing when it's a zone or a man combo, because in talking with Andy Reid today, the Broncos will run a man combo. They'll look like zone, cover three, and just underneath, or flip it up like a matchup zone in basketball. So your question about being aware is yes. But part of the Chiefs team must do, it gets more specific than that. But yes, you've got to be ready for everything this week in this game.
It'll be Chiefs versus Broncos coming up Sunday at noon. You'll be able to hear the game right here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, with the great Mitch Holthus on the call. Mitch joins us every Thursday during the Chiefs season right here on the show, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Mitch, as always, man, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, have a very happy new year and enjoy the call coming up on Sunday. I know it's a little different this year because the Broncos have been so down, but I know Chiefs-Broncos is always a special game, so I hope it's a fun one, and we'll talk to you next week.
No, I think the Broncos will come to play. We'll be ready to go, and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
That is the great Mitch Holthus joining us here on 580 Sports Talk, the absolute best in the business. We appreciate Mitch's time as always. With that, we're going to take one more time out on the show today. We'll come back and wrap up the penultimate edition of 580 Sports Talk for the year after this with the final word. Wrapping up this Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word. And the final word for me today is that Jalon Daniels is that dude. I know Jason Bean had great moments this year. I know that some fans, I'm not saying all, but some fans of other programs were maybe a little bit mad that Jalon Daniels, despite missing so much time with injury, was named second team All Big 12 this year. I hope last night put all that nonsense to bed. Jalon Daniels is that guy. And I know KU came up short, and I know moral victories are lame. They're loser stuff. But that was an incredible effort by KU. I hope next year it turns around. Maybe that'll finally be a KU Bowl win. But last night was one of the best college football games I've ever seen, even though my favorite team did not end up picking up the victory in the contest. But Jalon Daniels, take a bow. The offensive player of the game for KU, no doubt about that. Best offensive game for any KU player ever. 565 offensive yards. So nothing but praise and adulation and flowers for Jalon Daniels after one of the all-time great KU performances in last night's Liberty Bowl loss. And that'll do it for the second to last, the penultimate 580 Sports Talk episode for calendar year 2022. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Dan and I will be previewing, I should say, the Chiefs and the Broncos. We'll have our keys to the game. Matt Derrick will join us. We'll pick our yearly champion and what is wrong with you, and we'll do a little 2022 year in review as well. So until then, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, for my partner, Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. We appreciate you for listening to another edition of 580 Sports Talk.